Tipp today in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slattery'sGarage.ie.
Good morning, welcome along to Tipp Today, 1800 938 007. That's our free phone number. Won't cost you if you'd like to make a call to us. And Leanne is producing today. Coming up on the show, the I Stand with Survivors campaign urges the government to ban victims' counselling notes from sexual violence trials. We'll talk about that in just a little while. Why teenagers should not have free rein on their mobile devices after the age of 16. Interesting conversation later on with Mairin McCarthy. Deputy Mattie McGrath will be with us live in studio. We'll be talking about lottery ads being targeted at young children. We have the latest instalment of Conor Reedy's Hidden History, and Ali has the Conspiracy Files. So all of that and much, much more on the way. You can text and you can WhatsApp 083 311 3311. You can email tipptoday@tippfm.com. And as ever, we're always delighted to hear from you. Let's have a look at the front pages of some of the newspapers. Now, it being Wednesday, the local papers are on your shelves, and we go first of all to the Tipperary Star, and the headline there, A Wonderful Lady, and that's making reference to the late Valerie Young, of course, and communities mourning the passing of wife, mother and former councillor and Team Lowry member. And Michael Lowry said her kindness, compassion and willingness to help others was a hallmark of her character. And that's the Tipperary Star. And let's go on to The Guardian. The main story on The Guardian today, Tipperary Chamber of Commerce urging commercial ratepayers to engage with the council amid disappointment over another rate increase in 2026. The Nationalist, and the headline there, we think about him all of the time, and RTE's crime call appeal over the fatal hit and run nearly 43 years ago in Tipperary. The family speaking out for the first time. How could somebody leave somebody on the side of the road? And that's making reference there to the Ivers family, of course, appealing for information regarding the fatal hit and run of 20-year-old Maurice Ivers outside of Feathert in April of 1983. To the national newspapers then, the Irish Times, and the lead story there, the value of Irish mortgages drawn down rose to the highest level ever since 2008 last year, driven by first-time buyers of new homes, switchers and rising house prices in a market hamstrung by undersupply. Needless to say, coverage of the flooding right across the newspapers today, and on the front of the Times, they're telling us that dozens of homes and businesses in Wexford, Dublin and Wicklow were damaged in significant flooding that also caused serious disruption to road, rail and air travel during Storm Chandra yesterday. The Independent is dominated by a photograph from Enniscorthy, and the Slaney search and rescue team there helping Tricia and Jude Delaney, who's only 4 after severe flooding, even though it has to be said that Jude looks very excited being in the front of the rescue boat there. The lead story on the Indo today, again, it's around that housing story, but they're telling us that the number of owner-occupiers moving home fell to its lowest level since 2014, adding to evidence the post-crash generation remains stuck on the property ladder. The Irish Daily Mail, and here's a very worrying story for you. Hospitals are hiring diagnostic staff who do not hold qualifications recognised by the HSE, posing a significant risk to patients. That's according to the Irish Daily Mail today. Finally, we have a look at the Irish Examiner. And the lead story on the Examiner today, again, it's a topical story. The government is willing to ban the scourge of scrambler bikes in public places following the death of Dublin teenager Grace Lynch, but road safety campaigners have blasted it for dragging its heels over such action. And finally, that other story on the front of the Examiner today, the 4 Gardaí who were acquitted on Monday of attempting to pervert the course of justice in Limerick have had their suspensions lifted with immediate effect. So that's a look at what's making headlines. You want to make comment on any of that, and if you do, again, we'd love to hear from you. Text WhatsApp 083 311 3311. Now, the I Stand With Survivors campaign has called on the government to ban victims' counselling notes from being used in sexual violence trials. A proposed amendment to the Criminal Law and Civil Law Bill 2025 by the Justice Minister Jim O'Callaghan retains the possibility of counselling notes being disclosed in certain cases following a judicial hearing. It will be voted on by the government a little later on today. But Laura Witherow is part of the I Stand With Survivors campaign, and she joins me now. Laura, good morning to you.
Good morning, Fran. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Lovely to talk to you again, and thank you for coming on with us. Would you just lay it out for us? Why do you believe the government should ban victims' counselling notes from being used in sexual violence trials, Laura?
So I'm very privileged to be part of a group of women, Fran, that have been lobbying TDs, ministers and the government for the last number of years on this. When you go to court and you're sitting there as a witness effectively in your own trial, you are facing an entire defence team who have had access to your counselling notes, meaning which your defence team has, or the defence team rather, has read all of your personal counselling notes, and the perpetrator has also read them in order to form part of their defence case. A counsellor, therapists are not qualified to gather evidence. They are taking notes based on what you're saying to them. Some of that could be their interpretation of what you're saying. So it's not factual all the time. It's not evidence-based, number one. Number two, people go to counselling because they're trying to heal. And I say heal very loosely because obviously we all know that, you know, you're going to counselling. It's not going to fix you. It's only going to help you. Going to counselling doesn't take away your abuse, doesn't take away the violence that you've endured. It's only just part of the process of trying to get back to living some sort of a normal life. And to have somebody invade that privacy and use it, weaponise it against you in court, it's the worst thing that can possibly happen. So people are now going into counselling, if they're brave enough to go at all, and censoring their thoughts for fear of what they're saying in counselling being used against them further down the line in court.
Or I presume not going into counselling and therapy at all.
Yeah. Like, I mean, some people are afraid to start counselling until the court process is over. That in itself then brings its own problem, because that is used against you in court, and it's almost permised that you're not affected enough by what happened to you because you're not going to counselling.
Now, and again, for clarity on this, because my understanding is that judges, they just don't hand over records. It's done in a private inspection or in camera, as they say, which would prevent some sort of fishing expedition into the notes. Is that true?
So it is and it isn't. That piece of legislation that was brought in a number of years ago has been kind of almost used wrongly, and the government have come out and admitted that. Minister Jim O'Callaghan has acknowledged that in the amendments to this bill, that it hasn't been used correctly, in that if you go before a judge and you're trying to prevent your counselling notes being used, we've been told, and I have seen this in countless cases, if you don't hand over your counselling notes, it's probably going to delay your case by 10 months, 2 years, 3 years, etc. And in this process, it's so slow to begin with. The average time at the moment from making your statement to getting into a court is 4.5 to 5 years. So people are so consumed by that while it's happening. They don't want to wait another 2, 3, 4 years. And so you feel pressurised to hand them over if you're given a choice at all.
Could I put this to you? And again, I'm just putting this to you, Laura, just for the sake of clarity on what it is you're saying to me, because it could be argued, and well, it's the whole... at the core of our judicial system is that you're innocent until proven guilty and all of that, and an accused is, you know, they have the constitutional right to a fair trial and stuff. If the counselling records contained information about inconsistent statements or, I don't know, memory problems or alternative explanations in some way, Is there not an argument to be made for them to be presented in court?
Yeah, no, I agree completely with that. But the point is, they don't know what's contained in our counselling notes prior to looking for them. So, like, I personally have my counselling notes used against me in court. Not in any capacity. There was no inconsistencies in my counselling notes regarding dates or memories or whatever. And mine was a historical case. What was used against me from my counselling notes, for example, was I had said in part that I felt responsible. And the part where I said I had felt responsible because, unfortunately, other members of my family were also abused. That's the part that I felt responsible for, being the eldest child. But that's the part that the defence team chose to use out of my counselling notes against me.
Yeah, and I can't imagine how difficult that was for you, Laura.
Yeah, look, there's no point in sitting here and telling you that was easy, because I would be lying, Fran, because it was possibly part of the most difficult part of the trial.
Why do you think, I mean, they keep bringing up the constitutionality of this in some way. Is that at the core of their argument?
It more or less is, but like our kind of counter argument is your conversations with your spouse are privileged. If you go to a priest, that conversation is privileged. Somebody could go to a priest and admit to them in the morning that they murdered someone, and that couldn't be used in court. So why cannot the most innermost, deep, darkest thoughts of our lives that we finally find the courage and are brave enough to share with somebody to try and help ourselves, why can't those be privileged?
What, I presume you've spoken to other public representatives besides the minister. What is the general feeling on this, do you think, Laura?
So most of them are saying that they feel quite unsettled by it, and they don't understand why it's a thing that they're used in court at all, given that it's a very unbalanced system as it is towards, like, the victim always feels like they're on trial. And councillors have agreed with why we feel like that. TDs, ministers, the government have agreed with that. But they just don't seem to be willing to make the change.
And this vote that's going to happen, how do you think that's going to turn out? Have you any idea about that?
At the moment, like, we know we have the support of a lot of TDs. However, we're not confident on the support from the main party in government at the moment. So, unfortunately, we don't believe it's going to go our way today.
And obviously, you and other survivors are extremely disappointed about that possibility.
Yeah, it's devastating, because this is just one small part of what we're trying to gain back for ourselves. Like, if you go into court in the morning, our counselling notes can be used. A perpetrator's notes cannot. We're a witness in our own trial, so we must take the stand. A perpetrator does not have to. We have no control or choice, whereas they have all the control and they have choices.
How does this compare, Laura, to other jurisdictions? I'm thinking of the UK or the United States or whatever.
So, like, the United Nations have actually come out and said that the way Ireland are handling these cases and the disclosure of counselling notes is entirely against what they stand for, and have recommended that the Irish government vote today to ban counselling notes from trials in an effort to start looking like they want to help victims and survivors of abuse. Other countries do not do this. There is no disclosure. I can't speak for every country. I haven't done my research in every single country in the world, but I know for the most part it does not happen.
And you would imagine that, you know, that would inform the deputies today when they vote on this.
Yeah, you would hope. You would hope. However, because of this unconstitutional word that they're putting on things, it does not look like the parties in government are going to vote our way, unfortunately. Yeah,
and your legal representatives, do they view this as a constitutional issue?
No. They said that the minister today could turn around and make counselling notes privileged, like other things are privileged, i.e. a priest, just to use for example, and that could solve the constitutional issue that they're arising.
Yeah, you see, I was going to say that to you, that I thought a therapist would be in the same position as a doctor or a psychiatrist, in that notes are privileged. I mean,
Yeah, and therapists do not want this, Fran. For the vast majority of therapists I have spoken to, and therapists that have reached out to our campaign, have said they do not want this. They are not qualified to gather evidence. What they're writing down a lot of the time is not exactly what's coming out of our mouths, so it is not evidence or factually based.
All right, we'll see what happens today, Laura, but you're not hopeful.
No, unfortunately not.
Laura, we appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on with me. Thank you and good morning.
Thanks so much for giving me the time, Fran.
Good morning to you, Laura. Always good to speak to you. That's Laura Witherow speaking to us there from the I Stand With Survivors campaign. 1800 938 007.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Yeah, following that conversation there with Laura, Deirdre was on to us and she's wondering the disclosure of the counselling notes, is it not against the GDPR privacy laws? Well, I would imagine, you see, the main thrust of what Jim O'Callaghan is saying is that the disclosure of the counselling records is not compatible with the Constitution and would risk the accused's right to a fair trial. So that's what he would be saying to you on that. Now, you wonder about the fairness of the woman involved then when her notes are made available to the courts in that sort of a way. But there you go. I'm sure that conversation will go on, but it will be interesting to see how that vote works out today. Columnist with the Irish Independent, Mary McCarthy, recently wrote an opinion piece on why we shouldn't just leave teenagers to their own digital devices once they turn 16. I'm delighted to say she joins me now. Mary, good morning to you.
Good morning, Fran.
And thanks very much indeed for coming on with us today. You wrote, Mary, that although they may look and sound like adults, it's our job to provide our teen children with a digital seatbelt for the years ahead. And I suppose we rarely discuss if parents should continue to limit and police teenagers' time on social media platforms after 16, Mary.
That's it, Fran. It's all about the under 16s. But actually, when your kids start to get older, you start to mull about the longer, the implications of their phone use. And it struck me, I have a 17-year-old son, and, looking at him, he's as vulnerable as his 12-year-old brother, because when you look at the concentration, the sleep, mental health, the addictive nature of his mobile, I really feel that it's really important he has a limit. Unfortunately, they don't seem like a lot of 16, 17-year-olds don't seem to have limits, And for me, there's a direct correlation with there's a huge rise in school absenteeism. To me, it's a no-brainer. It's the phones, because in the last kind of 6 years, the like Insta, Snapchat, TikTok, like all the algorithms, that they've really become, very, really like addictive. And I just feel it's you must, when you're a teenager, 16, 17, it's not easy, but you've got to cap the time that they're spending on their phones.
But of course they're all doing it, Mary, and you make the point yourself that some might see it as socially damaging to a 17-year-old, for example, to limit their time on social media platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. On the face of it, it sounds really, over the top, right? My son called me dystopian, dictator. So, but actually, funny enough, Fran, I think that he secretly is kind of okay with it, because it's just Monday to Thursday, really, because Friday he'll generally be out doing something with his friends. And if he's out and about, I will open his phone, because they're actually on their phones when they're with their friends playing games on TikTok and stuff like that. So I do that. But the Monday to Thursday, it's just crucial for him. And it's not like he didn't get any time. So how we work it is he gets an hour and a half on social media, and he can spend that as he wants, but there's limits on certain apps. So Snapchat is 30 minutes, and then Instagram will be 30 minutes. So he can't do any more than that, right? So he can still use it, but after that, his phone won't let him use it. Now, WhatsApp is open all the time. So if he wants to text me for money, which he does a lot, he can use that. So in theory, he can, if he wants to ring his friend and say, look, where are you? You're not at the park or whatever. He can. But he just can't get 500 messages. I was seeing his attention span was shot to pieces, and I had to do something. So it's kind of funny because when he was 11 or 12, I had left kind of limits on his time because I didn't know. You know, it was kind of exciting. He had a phone, he had an iPod. I wasn't aware. Whereas now I'm aware, and I see where I went wrong, and I don't want to. I really just want to try and kind of prepare him for the time ahead. Also, it's really easy to kind of put these controls on, but you can use like Google Family Link. It's a free. If you can't use it yourself, ask anyone you know who can do it. I always say to parents, like, it is very, very easy to do this. And what happens is his phone then turns off at 10, so he can't use it after 10. So, you know, that means he's not up all night. Like, I know, Fran, he'd be up till 2 a.m. Like, without a doubt, if I didn't do that, you know.
Of course, but in a matter of months, he will legally be an adult, Mary, you know, when he turns 18. Is this kind of your last-ditch attempt to kind of put him on the right path where social media is concerned?
Well, I do feel that even when he turns 18, I will still say, look, if your devices are off at 10 on school nights, because you're still in school, right? But you're right, there's not much I can do. After he turns 18, like, he's an adult. I mean, he's way taller than me. I do feel so sorry for single parents, because there's nights when, you know, I'm like, okay, you got to give me your laptop. And, like, he's just like, no. And, like, you know, you need the backup. It's really, really hard sometimes. But you're right, he's going to be 18, and I do see it as my last chance. But it's funny now, Fran, when I ask him about his younger siblings, when they should be allowed to use social media, and he actually says, I don't think many before 15 or even 16 that they should be. Yeah, he says that himself. So I do, like, he's very aware. Like, teenagers are very aware of their mental health, although they will be scrolling TikTok for 6 hours a day if they can. They know it's not good for them. They know that, you know, and I just feel, you know, as a parent, and it is, I don't want to come across as holier than thou. I've made every mistake in the book, you know. At one stage, I thought I had a limit on TikTok when he was like 12, but there was a glitch there, and it turned out he was on it like 5 or 6 hours a day during COVID. And so I have made lots of mistakes, and I feel bad about that. But now that I know, I've been armed with the education, you know, like his 12-year-old brother, like, he won't be getting any sort of social media. I think 15, 16... I think that's the age when you're nearly ready for it. You know?
You allude to it in your piece as well. We have to be very careful here, Mary, of hypocrisy, and I really have to hold my hand up here, because the amount of time I spend on social media platforms. Now, I try to justify it and say, well, it's part of the job and I have to keep with it, but to be honest with you, most of it is just doom scrolling, you know. So we tend to be a little bit hypocritical.
Fran, you've hit the nail on the head, and and my son did say this to me. He said, look, Mammy, like, you're on your phone constantly. Like, you're such a hypocrite telling me I can only be on the Instagram 30 minutes a day. There you are, like, all day, all night long, looking at your dash hound videos, you know, dog videos nonstop. So that kind of was a wake up, and I was like, you're right. Like, I don't have a leg to stand on. So, you know, I do think we do need to look at our own. And, like, you look at you see kids on their phones walking around the street, but I've bumped into many an adult. I have bumped into people myself walking down the road looking at a video, you know. So I got this thing called the Brick. It's like a physical app blocker, and it's like a magnet on my fridge, and you lock your apps, and then you can only unlock them when you tap it. It's like a phone. It's like a kind of a bank card. You untap it. So now when I'm going out running, it's only now I realise that I can't check social media. I'd stop halfway through my run, Fran, and I'd be checking like LinkedIn or like Instagram, like a lunatic, you know. And it's like you don't even know you're doing it. Your brain just does it. And I mean, I kind of think there is lots of positives with social media. Like for Instagram, I get a lot out of those funny videos, you know. But if you don't limit it, it's just so addictive, you know. And
of course, yeah.
You're right, Fran. We are hypocrites, a lot of us.
Completely.
You know,
I was out gigging last night in Killarney. I got back about 2:45 or something. What did I do? I knew I had to get up at 6, Mary, but I went and I ended up scrolling and going through nonsense till about 6:15. Absolutely crazy. Philip is in Mullinahone. He was on, and he's asking you a very, very valid question. He wonders, do you struggle to keep up to date on teenagers' lingo? He often feels that he doesn't understand what the hell they're talking about in the first place. And this is making reference, I suppose, to that series Adolescence that was such an incredible hit last year as well. What about that question from Philip, Mary?
Oh yeah, Philip, I'm with you. Like, the kids, like, they're, half the time I'm like, is that negative? Is that positive? What are you saying? Like, I'll give them their dinner and they'll be like, they'll give me some, I don't know, like, I totally get it is. But it's funny, the Adolescence TV show, I did not watch it because I feel that it was actually a negative thing, because I think that, it's so rare that like you're going to get child murder like this, and actually the stats are show we've never had it like lower rates, So on the Adolescents, I didn't watch it, so I can't say. But yeah, totally with you, Philip. I don't know. Like, I actually sit down and go, like, give me a crash course, like. Why are you calling me bro all the time? I don't know about Philip if he gets called bro, but I get called bro all the time.
It's amazing, isn't it? So finally, a bit of advice from your experience, Mary. And I know you're not in the least bit patronising, but from your experience, what would you say to parents out there about this then?
I'd say that if you don't have a limit on your teenager's phone, they are up at night. If they have access to it, they are, and that sleep deprivation is probably causing, if they have issues, if they've got anxiety, you can't get them out of the scratcher to go to school. I mean, that, to me, was the first sign. I just couldn't get him up, and then I realised it's actually his school laptop, Fran, interestingly enough, because I didn't realise with the school laptop he could use it 24/7 because there's no limits on that. I just had assumed kind of naively that the laptop turned off or something. Yeah. So another thing, to parents, ask your kids about their school device, because like that's what it was only when I was up one night at 1:30 and my son's light was on. I was like, what's going on? And I saw he was on ChatGPT and the school laptop chatting away. Like, he wasn't doing anything bad. He was having a conversation with ChatGPT about hip hop. They were having like an argument. And I was like, that's kind of positive. I don't mind that, but it's 1:30. Like, you got to get up. Like, so this is out of control. So then that's when that was a few months ago now, and that's when we actually just.
So you have to keep
up. We actually got a router and turned off the internet.
So you have to keep up the speed all of the time on what it is they're at, and that's almost a full-time job,
Well, I guess being parents, it's not easy all the time, as you know yourself. I'm sure, Fran, if you're a parent, But there's a lot of, I think that your kids, and especially if you're not on your phone all the time, if you can say to them and be honest with them, like, I struggle as well, and if I struggle, I know you struggle, like we all struggle. And, this digital world we're going to be more and more living in, it's got so many positives. Like, let's get the most out of it, but let's not let it nick our attention spans, because as a friend pointed out to me this morning, like, she's got a younger kid, and she's like, I find, Fran, like, parents of younger kids are way more kind of conscious of this, and she was like all the things that they're not going to be doing if they're on their phones. I think the average is like 4 or 5 hours a day. Like, all that time, like, what are you not doing? Like, I know, Fran, me and you, we would have watched TV, right?
Sure.
And like kids do that as well. So you got to be like, okay, you can watch a podcast because that's what you do now. Like, the entertainment ecosystem has totally changed. But it's just to keep an eye on that constant kind of notifications, like attention. So there is time caps. And then once they turn 18, they're adults. You can only hope and pray you've helped them along the way,
Well, that's for sure. Mary, a pleasure, and thank you so much for making time for us today. Thank you, Mary, and good morning to you.
Thanks a lot, Fran.
Thank you. Bye-bye to you now. It's Mairin McCarthy. That piece, by the way, is still up there. If you want to have a look at it, it's very thought-provoking, indeed, very informative as well. 1800 938 007. Back in just a tad.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tipp today on 1800 938 007.
Welcome back to Tipp today. Now, the news that the Technical University of the Shannon is to offer 2 new courses in racing greyhound welfare has been dismissed by advocacy group Greyhound Action Ireland as another cynical attempt by the Irish greyhound racing industry to put lipstick on a pig, or a greyhound, I suppose, in this case. Now, Nuala Donnellan is spokesperson for Greyhound Action Ireland and joins me now. Good morning to you, Nuala.
Good morning, Fran. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome indeed. If greyhound racing is not going to be banned, is this not a step towards educating people, at least, Nuala, who want to be part of the industry, but at least they'd know more about the welfare of the dogs, which is what concerns people like yourself and indeed myself too?
Well, I had a look at the content of the course, and it will do nothing to address the 2 main welfare problems in the Irish greyhound industry. And the first of those, and the most significant one, is the overbreeding and killing of thousands of unwanted dogs every year. The second one is the large number of dogs who get injured and die on tracks. That's not going to be addressed by this course. There's no course on earth that will address that. Individual acts of cruelty to greyhounds is not the problem, although it does happen. We don't know for sure how large that problem is because the Greyhound Board is entirely self-regulating. There's no outside agency with the power to investigate reports of cruelty to greyhounds. So these courses are a PR stunt, and that's what they are, and they'll be paid for by the Irish taxpayer again. So we would be far more interested in, the withdrawal of public funding for an activity which is essentially the state-sponsored overbreeding and killing of healthy dogs.
The content of the course, what do you know about that, Nuala?
Well, the first one I saw there was, responsible dog ownership. They talk about, taking care of dogs, feeding dogs, food for dogs. I don't see anything on the course, educating them about not giving drugs to dogs, for example. Drugging dogs is widespread in the greyhound industry, including cocaine. I don't see anything on there about, female surgical insemination, a practice so cruel that it's banned for all other breed of dogs in Ireland, banned for every breed of dog in most country, in widespread use in the greyhound racing industry. So, it's surface stuff like using the traceability system and, food to give to your dogs and, how to avoid giving food that might contain something that shows up in drug tests and so on. So that's the content of these courses.
Yeah, and is this a study for people who want to get into the administration of the greyhound industry? Is it like who is it geared towards?
I believe it's for people in the industry, people who are actively involved, who own greyhounds or who want to own greyhounds. But as far as I know, it's not available to people, just regular people who might apply for courses in universities. In fact, it's quite hard to get information on these courses. Who is teaching these courses, right. For example. I can't get information on the personnel teaching the course.
And who's writing up the modules, for example? Do you know that?
Apparently it's the greyhound industry itself. It's people working for Greyhound Racing Ireland. I don't know, what the outside component of this is, or if it's entirely inside the industry that it's been organised. It appears to me that it is. And
the qualification, is it like diploma level? Is there a degree in this? What about
it's that? It's a level 6 QQI, which would be diploma level. Apparently would be diploma level, yeah.
And do we know anything about the take-up on this?
Again, I don't know. I saw they have released a photograph with their PR, and there seems to be about 20 people in the photograph. But again, it's a stunt. It's not going to do anything, as I said, about, we have been tracking the dogs born in 2021, which is the first year their traceability system was in place. There were roughly 12 and a half dogs born that year, just under that figure. 5,000 were exported, 7,500 remain in Ireland. And of that 7,500 remaining here, over 5,000, 68% of them are already dead. And the oldest of those dogs will be 5. That's the problem in the Irish greyhound racing industry. It's based on a breeding-centric model. So it overbreeds dogs to get the few that will race fast enough. We also export 85% of the dogs used in the UK are bred in Ireland. So the Irish taxpayer is essentially propping up the racing and betting industry in Britain. I mean, apart from welfare, Fran, from the point of view of a useful and a wise use of public funds, it's insane, the public funding of greyhound racing. The industry hasn't returned a dividend to the Irish economy in over 25 years. It's not expected to. They introduce these power reports, on 4 or 5 yearly basis, which are, we have had professional analysis done of them, and they exaggerate the value to the economy. There hasn't been one done since 2021. That one is based on 2019 figures. So pre-pandemic 7-year-old figures are still being used and were used last November in the Dáil by the Minister for Agriculture, defending the public funding of greyhound racing.
Well, there is that report now. It's by the racing industry itself, but saying that the contribution from the industry was about 132.3 million to the Irish economy, and that there's over 4,000 full-time and part-time jobs and all of that kind of thing.
Again, not greyhound racing. That included coursing dogs in the Republic. It included greyhound and coursing dogs north of the border. It left dogs in the racing pipeline for significantly longer than they should have. It included dead dogs. It included dogs already exported. In fact, the analysis carried out by the Preferred Results Company show that it exaggerated the value to the economy by 239%, or 68 million euros. Now, we sent that to the Greyhound Board. We sent it to the Minister for Agriculture, and they didn't deny any of the information in that report. It's online on our website if anybody wants to access it.
Will you take the other usual arguments for me, just for people out there who might have an opposing view? Let me put them to you. That, for instance, it supports rural communities and it's part of the social fabric. It's a social outlet for people in rural Ireland. What do you say to that, Nuala?
The first thing I'd say to that is greyhound stadia around this country are practically empty when you take industry insiders and people who work in the stadiums out of it. In 2023, stadiums in Ireland, greyhound stadiums, were 70 to 91% empty. They were down a further 25,000 than that in 2024. Now, that power report we referenced earlier claimed that in some parts of rural Ireland, in some parts of the country, greyhound racing provided the only meaningful source of employment. We asked the Minister for Agriculture if he could specify what parts of the country the local economy depended on greyhound racing, and he didn't answer the question. Just didn't give us an answer. The answer is greyhound racing is a niche activity. There's just at the moment 5,200 people who own greyhounds, racing greyhounds in this country. Number has been falling consistently in the past 6 years. So it's not an important, and I don't think even the Greyhound Board themselves at this stage would claim any longer that it's important. It essentially exists, Fran, to provide betting content. And that's increasingly betting content for online betting companies, not even based in Ireland. They're outside Ireland. So that's what the Irish taxpayer is paying for, and that's what Irish dogs are dying for. And
since those unfortunate exposés that we all saw on television and the like as well, Nuala, would you not accept that, at least from a welfare point of view, that there's been some movement forward on animal welfare? No, it's happening at exactly the same rate. We have been tracking the information on their traceability system. The number of dogs being killed at a young age because they can't run or they never ran fast enough to get on a track in the first place is exactly the same as was exposed in 2019. In 2024, 5% of all dogs put out to race on tracks were dead before the end of the race. That was the worst since records began. So, in fact, welfare in the greyhound industry is getting worse. It's not getting better. And they would claim that there's more investment in regulation and care in recent years, raising the standards of the industry. I presume you would disagree profoundly with that as well, would you?
But it's entirely self-regulating, Fran. As I said, they are self-regulating when it comes to cruelty. And we are trying to get information on a case, and we simply can't. A year later, we cannot get information from the Greyhound Board. We can't get it from the Minister for Agriculture, the Minister for Justice, or the Garda headquarters. We can get no information on this case. So they regulate when it comes to cruelty. They regulate when it comes to drugs. They take the samples, they test it in their own laboratory, and they give us the results. There is no outside control of greyhound racing in this country. It's entirely self-regulating, and if we know anything in this country, It's that self-regulation doesn't work. So it's lacking entirely in transparency. It's a bit like their traceability system. They put in place a traceability system which costs nearly €250,000. It costs 141,000 a year to run, and only registered greyhound owners can access that system, and they can only trace their own dogs. I mean, it has lightheartedly been described as a traceability system for forgetful owners. To get information from that system, we have to go through a laborious process of submitting parliamentary questions, and that's how we can access information. So there's no transparency around greyhound racing in this country at all.
And in terms of political support for your case then, Nuala, what kind of support do you have from our public representatives?
You know, there seems to be a small handful of TDs in the main parties, all the main parties, who are directly involved in greyhound racing. And they seem to be calling the shots in the political parties on this. And isn't it interesting, Fran, that there's two activities in this country that are guaranteed funding by law. That's horse racing and greyhound racing. And ownership or part ownership of a racing greyhound or a racehorse does not have to be declared in the register of members' interests. Even though these TDs stand up year after year and vote through tens of millions of euros to these activities, but apparently the taxpayer isn't entitled to know that they might actually down the line benefit and receive prize money which is tax free.
One of our listeners wants to know, does Nuala feel the same about horse racing as she does about greyhound racing?
I don't know what the figures are for horse racing, but if thousands of horses are being killed every year because they can't run fast enough, then I would certainly have the same problem with horse racing. And if 5% of all horses put out to race on horse tracks, on racetracks around the country were dying. And you know something, I have a feeling if those figures were as high in the horse racing industry, I think there would be uproar about that as well.
All right, Nuala, thanks for your time this morning, and good to talk to you. Thank you, and good morning to you. Bye-bye. And that's Nuala Donlan there, who's spokesperson for the Greyhound Action Ireland group, and we started our conversation at least there about that news that the Technical University of the Shannon is to offer 2 new courses in racing greyhound welfare, and it's been dismissed, needless to say, by Nuala's group there. Leanne is with me. Good morning to you, Leanne.
Good morning, Fran.
And good to see you this morning. Tell me about this. This is a board game. Now, board games normally, you know, they're nice little family activities and all of that. But this is a controversial one.
Yeah, there's 2 that are making headlines at the moment. Both of them controversially focus on Irish history. So the first one is Troubles, Shadow War in Northern Ireland, 1964 to 1998. So it's in progress. It hasn't been finished yet, but the idea has been put out there that it's coming. So it's a multiplayer card game, and it allows you to play as characters during the Troubles in Ireland, during the Sunnydale Agreement or the hunger strikes. So it is based in Northern Ireland, and players would either be on one side or the other. They'd use cards and they'd go through the momentous moments throughout the Troubles.
And would you take on the persona of the big names, the big figures of the time? Is that what
yeah, now they're obviously still finalising the characters exactly, but some of them, you could be a hunger striker.
Wow.
You could be part of the IRA. You could be on the complete opposite side, and each person playing is a different character, and they go through the set and scenes of the Troubles.
Now, is the object behind it, is it to teach history in some sort of a way that's kind of, I don't know, entertaining, dare I say?
I think where the big controversy came is that the man behind this is not Irish. He's American.
Okay.
So that stirred a lot of trouble.
Right.
And so many victims groups have come out because this one in particular, it's so fresh. And it's something, people are still alive. So many people that lived through this. And we like the Vikings and we like the Normans and we have games based around them. But it's a long time ago. A long time ago.
A lot of these issues are still very, very raw as well. How does it work though? Is it like Monopoly, or is it like what kind of a board game is it?
Yeah, so it'd be based on with cards.
Oh, it's
so
cards.
You'd pick up a card, I think similar to Dungeons and Dragons, that idea of a role-playing card game. So you pick up a card and you have a scenario and a scene and you have a character and you go through, you have a backstory on their life and you play the part of that character from the Troubles.
Tell me about the other one. The Irish famine, really?
Yeah, so it's a
board game about the Irish famine.
About the Irish famine, and it's a crowdfunded, so they've actually taken donations to make this, and they've collected about €12,000, and it's Irish Famine, the Great Hunger. So you either get to play as a tenant farmer or a landlord at the time, and you have to try escape the hunger and the disease playing an Irish character.
Inappropriate or what?
That's the thing. That's the huge argument, because some people would say artistic licence. These things really happened and we're making art out of it. This is an art form. But then others are like, this is completely inappropriate. People died. People still remember, have relatives through the generations. Stories have been passed on. And in particular with the Troubles one, so many victims groups have come out. And I know museums have come out and archaeologists and historians and said, you had a chance to make something beautiful here. You could have done this as a way to teach history. But instead, you're doing it in a way that many see as severely crass or inappropriate.
It's very, very strange indeed. So we're looking for people's view on that. I mean, we're asking listeners, do you see that as being inappropriate? Now, both of them are still in the making. In the making. Right. So.
And the big argument is, we're jumping on the woke train now and we're going to end up like cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation, and this is our culture, so people outside of the culture shouldn't be role-playing our trauma. But then the other argument is, this is too fresh.
Yeah.
With something like the Vikings, we've learned the history. It's hundreds of years ago.
Yeah.
We've come to terms with that. But something so niche is causing a huge argument.
All right, let's find out what people think about that. 1800 938 007. Thanks very much indeed for that, Leanne. Now, for this week's Down Your Way, our Eamon is in the rag.
We're here, of course, at the rag this week. Pod Champion is with me. Pod, what a special weekend is coming up for you guys.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant there. We're running a tractor run there for Liam Brereton. Liam was a young lad from the parish, 18 years of age, who was in a devastating car accident just before Christmas. And he's shown unbelievable strength and determination, and he's fully committed to do everything he can to kind of recover, adapt and take back control of his life. He was fortunate enough to get a place up in the National Rehabilitation Centre up in Dunleary, so we're trying to raise funds to help him overcome all the obstacles that he's going to face down the road.
And you've gone a long way already with funds.
Yeah, we set up a GoFundMe there after Christmas, and we're overwhelmed. The family and people organising are overwhelmed at the level of support. Far exceed what we had initially kind of even planned. It's absolutely fantastic to see, and it shows the great community spirit around, not only from our own parish but all the neighbouring parishes and the school in Templemore, Our Ladies, where he was done his Leaving Cert last year, and Kildalton College, where he was down doing his degree down there.
It's amazing the way communities work together.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic, and I suppose you don't really realise it until it kind of falls on your own doorstep that the support that the level of support is out there from all the surrounding parishes and even the wider community as a whole, the farming community and everyone else, few and far between.
Absolutely. So the whole setup has been run, of course, on Sunday.
We're doing a tractor run, so we've kind of two events organised. So there's a tractor run on the 8th of February, starting at 12 noon. Registration is starting at 10:30, and then there's a food and auction here in the rag at 2:30. And then after that, in May, we're running a kind of a thank you night. The family have requested that we do a thank you night to give back to the people who support the fundraiser. So we're running a big raffle there where there's some fantastic prizes already on offer that I'm sure you'll see on social media there in the coming weeks.
A couple of weeks ago I was at a meeting just to tell you about the radio show, and surely 50 people were here just putting things together. Yeah, shows the esteem kind of Liam is held around the place. That he was kind of a pure rogue really going around the place. Yeah.
As soon as it was mentioned, so many people around got involved, from the parish of Drum and Inch and even surrounding parishes. Kildalton already have ran a fundraiser for him, and Templemore doing the same inside in the school as well, to try give Liam the best chance of kind of becoming independent when he does get home.
Well, absolutely, sure, it should be absolutely fantastic for him, and I've just met one or two people here tonight. He's in great form, he feels good.
Yeah, he is. I went up to see him there before the Christmas, and I was waiting in the room for him. He was come back from doing his rehab, and all I heard was one of the nurses shouting down the road, shouting down the hall, and there's only one Cllr Mairin anyway, that's for sure. Now I don't know what he said, but I'm sure there's something chancy enough anyway.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And look, isn't it absolutely fabulous? Okay, the tractor run. The tractor run, there's more than a tractor involved. You can have a motorbike, you can have a Honda 50.
Yes, we have it down as a tractor run because Liam was such involved in his own farm at home and a huge lover of farm and agriculture in general, but we're tractors, even if families want to come down, tractors, motorbikes, whatever they want, and even if families want to come down to support or even see the tractors on their way, that they're more than welcome to come down and support it.
Absolutely. You're a neighbour of the Burtons.
Yeah, I live over the road from him. I suppose Liam, his first year adult hurling last year, he was down around doing the gym and everything with us. Just real funny and humorous lad to have around the place. We went up to Lougheed there before or around June bank holiday last year, and Liam came up with us as well. And jeez, he gives us some entertainment above.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And of course, just talking to some of the young fellas here tonight, that's magic. You know, there's a great feel about it.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, like we said earlier, we're overwhelmed with support so far, and we can't thank people enough for the support that they have shown.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is going to go on and on for months, I'm sure.
Yeah, like I said, we're running that second night in May as a kind of a thank you night, and I think there's kind of saying we'll close it off shortly after that then.
Okay. And indeed, it's what, as you say, he was a hurler in his day.
Yeah, he hurling last year, he's first year adult hurling last year, so he's still only 17, only gone 18 there last year, and he was involved in our 21s as well earlier on in the year, and he's, like you said, we're trying to just give him every chance.
Yeah, every chance, yeah. And of course, as you say, he was down in Piltown studying and all of that.
Yeah, he was down doing agriculture down there, a 2-year course down below. And what he used to do was, himself and a few more of them used to go around milking cows in the evening for farmers and that, try kind of put down the time down there, and even to get a bit of experience too, which helped him when he came home.
And that's our aim in there with Down Your Way from The Rag. You can hear that in its entirety on Saturday morning just after 10 o'clock. News and information's coming up.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24 111.
Thanks, Pat. Welcome back to the second hour of Tip Today. Now, Leanne was talking to us about those board games that are being developed just before the news there. And she was telling us about one around the famine in Ireland and the other around the Troubles. Now, you'd wonder how a board game, which is supposed to be entertainment, could be about the Troubles in Northern Ireland, but there you go. One of our listeners, I think it's Pat, who says, in relation to the game spoken about on your show by Leanne, the word game should not be associated in any way related to, I beg your pardon, it should read, a word game should not be associated in any way relating to those dark times on the island of Ireland. Far too much hurt related to both periods at this time in Ireland, it says here. Deirdre was on to say, Fran, it's like making a board game out of something like the Holocaust. Absolutely shocking. So there you go. We'll find out a little bit more because Leanne was just telling me there during the break, there's all sorts of really strange board games out there, like a board game about 9/11, for example. You'd wonder how you could make entertainment out of that. Tipperary resident Dr. Frank Houghton and a team of researchers recently carried out a study on the amount of National Lottery advertisements targeted at children. And Dr. Frank Houghton joins me online now. Good morning to you, Frank.
Good morning. Thanks for the invitation to come on.
And good to talk to you. What did your research tell you?
Yeah, this is sort of the fourth bit of analysis, fourth paper we've done looking at the lotto, the National Lottery, and various things related to it. In this one, we took a look at the official YouTube site, of the National Lottery. We examined 127 videos that they had online, publicly accessible online. There's no age barrier or anything like that. And I suppose we were disappointed and yet not surprised to see that over 20% of them had what we would consider examples of symbols or themes or signs which would be really quite child-friendly. Another 6 or so % of the videos online featured children. And we're just of the opinion, and this is something that's really important for us, and the message I think to get across is the lotto is gambling. It's wrapped up in this lovely, cuddly philanthropy, etc., but it is gambling. So we feel very strongly that no gambling advert should ever feature children.
Yeah, now the lottery themselves, they're arguing that the ads in question are no longer in use and they were made within a different regulatory and operational environment. Do you accept that, Frank?
I accept most of them were made in a different regulatory environment, but it does beg the question, why are they still available on their official YouTube site? They can store them, behind an age wall, or they can store them for posterity on some sort of archival site. But this is a publicly accessible site. I don't find that a very convincing argument in truth. And we know this site is used a lot because every week, if you happen to miss the lotto draw, you can just click on there to see it. So it's not like it's buried in the depths of Trinity Archives or something like that. It's very accessible to the public, including young people.
How does it get away with that, as you say, softly kind of image, even though it is very much gambling, but it seems to be treated differently to other forms of gambling for some reason or other?
Not only is the public perception different, and this is something we have a huge issue with, but legally it's treated really, really separately. In 2024, we passed the new Gambling Regulation Act. Now, I would say it's too slow rolling out, but it will get there. And when it rolls out, it will result in massive restrictions on gambling advertising in Ireland, which I think are wholly appropriate. I mean, our former president of Ireland, I know, spoke publicly about sports gambling advertising. I mean, we know, particularly on social media, it's absolutely everywhere. The trouble is, our entire Gambling Regulation Act is separate to the lottery. The lottery, it actually explicitly says in the Gambling Regulation Act that it does not cover the lottery. And I think that is a fundamental deficit and problem that needs to be fixed. We need this gambling legislation to cover all gambling, and that obviously includes the National Lottery.
And is that because some of the funding from the lottery goes to good causes and clubs around the country and that kind of thing? Is that the reasoning that is treated differently in some way?
It's very hard to know quite what the reasoning behind that is. I mean, yes, of course. A good volume of money does go to support good causes. But another theory is, we're talking tens and tens of millions go to the company that basically owns the lottery. I think it was formerly a Canadian pension fund. Now I think it's a French gambling firm. So I think that's what helps it pass as a kind of non-threatening activity, but the reality is it's still gambling, and as I say, tens of millions of euros are going to the gambling firm. Something I've often wondered about are the children appearing in these ads. Is there not already legislation there that would outlaw that in some way? Once again, the lotto is exempt from so many elements of our... We have sort of advertising standards. I'm sure in your line of work you're very familiar with this, but, Advertising Standards Authority Ireland and various codes. But they almost all explicitly say this does not cover the National Lottery. The National Lottery is covered by a separate code. Now, when you look at that code that does cover the National Lottery, it is very similar to, say, the Advertising Standards Authority code. But I suppose it comes down to enforcement. We're not necessarily strong on enforcement. We've looked at the codes that do cover the National Lottery, and that's why we feel there's been sort of a serious breach. You have published quite a number of journals on quite diverse stuff, but including the tobacco industry, alcohol, gambling control, all of that kind of thing. But the lottery card itself, that notion of the scratch
card. Again, it's perceived as being harmless, but how much of a difficulty is it if you're prone to gambling?
Well, personally, and we as a research team, we think this is huge. I mean, if you go into your local sort of supermarket, garage, corner shop, and you approach the counter, I mean, sometimes it's really hard to see if there's anyone serving or standing behind the counter because you've got this big ball of lotto tickets in front of you. And they go for as little as €1. I think almost any child in the state can afford that. And what makes it particularly problematic is that the Office of the Regulator of the National Lottery themselves have done two of these kind of secret shopper, mystery shopper things where they do test runs to see will shops sell to a young child. And they found that in almost 3 out of 10 cases in the most recent round of doing that, the shops did. They were willing to sell. So, I mean, I think there's two major problems here. One is if you're susceptible to gambling, if you're in dire need, you approach the counter, you can't but see these tickets. It's only €1. I think that feeds an addiction. But the availability to children is a particular issue. I don't know if you caught it yesterday, but the ESRI released a report. It's a really good one. I was very impressed with their work. But basically, it's a good nationally representative sample, 1,600 people, so, a good sort of chunky size. And what they found was 2/3 of people gambled underage, which is a huge issue. And those that did were twice as likely in later life to engage in problematic gambling. So we have this issue where you can't see cigarettes anymore, even though once upon a time people might remember you used to be able to buy them in ones, and then you could buy them in 10s, and now we restrict it to 20. But you can walk into your local shop, you can't see the cigarettes, you probably can't see the alcohol because of various screens and things, but what's sitting there right next to the Twixes and the Mars bars is lottery scratch cards.
You also make a very interesting point that you have the same office trying to protect gamblers while also raising funds for the lottery.
Yeah, there's a phrase some people may be familiar with called, moral jeopardy, and it's that trying to balance. But if you look at our nearest neighbour, if you look at the UK, they don't have the same person trying to safeguard the lottery and the same person trying to police it. I mean, the expression I always think of, is. What is it, gamekeeper turned pheasant? I mean, here we have one, not turned pheasant, gamekeeper turned, or poacher turned gamekeeper, sorry. And we have the same, we have the same person trying to do both jobs here. One is sort of, try and maximise profit for the lottery funds, and also protect players. It doesn't work.
And in other jurisdictions, what is the experience in a place like the UK and other European countries, for example?
Well, there they have a gambling regulation authority which sort of polices all gambling, which I think...
So it treats lottery as it treats other aspects of gambling. Is that it?
That is exactly. That's my understanding. I've read up on this, and it appears that it's policed effectively. I mean, we have some serious deficits in this country around gambling. So most people are aware, probably, that the Environmental Health Service will send children into shops periodically to try and buy cigarettes, and if they're successful, then potentially the shop can be prosecuted in court. I mean, it begs the question: why don't we have this for gambling? Why don't we have this for lottery tickets?
It's absolutely incredible, and we're putting it out to our listeners. I'm sure a lot of people, you see, we all think the National Lottery is kind of warm and fuzzy from those very expensive glossy ads, and we all fall for that, and we don't see it as problematic gambling, or the possibility that it could be problematic gambling.
Yeah, but there's another thing I'd just like to mention about their lovely glossy ads, and they're fantastic. I mean, another study which we've done recently, we haven't quite finished it yet, but we've sort of gone around some villages and towns and looked at just how many lotto signs will you see. Even if you walk in, I live in Ballina, in Tipp, and if I walk in, for example, to Super Value, just across the river in Cllr, there's gambling. There's the National Lottery logo repeatedly all around the shop. And as well as that, the budget that they have, the budget that the National Lottery have to support their advertising is I think, inappropriately inflated. I mean, every single week people spend money on the lottery, a certain percentage of people win on the lottery, but as we all know, some people lose the ticket, they forget to check, so this money slowly accumulates. And you are talking millions and millions of euros. So it came out, I think, in one of the public accounts committees last year that the amount of unclaimed money the public hadn't claimed from the National Lottery was well over 100 million euros.
Wow.
Now it's up to the regulator of the National Lottery to decide what should be done with that money. And my understanding is there's two options. She can tell the lottery that they should give that money away in prizes, or she can allow them to spend it on advertising. The office of the regulator made the decision to allow the National Lottery to spend 98% of that money on advertising.
Wow!
So when you think,
wow!
So when you think of all those glossy adverts, they're basically being, I presume, quite a high percentage of them are being paid for out of unclaimed lottery money.
That's incredible. Would you believe I've never done the lottery, but I often admire the quality of the advertising. But I mean, that explains it all. Now, we're delighted to know you're living amongst us here in Tipperary, Frank. How are you finding it here? You moved from the UK, did you?
Like almost all Englishmen that I meet over here, I met an Irish woman from County Offaly, and yes, I've been living here, since about 1993, bar a couple of years away in between, but yeah,
right.
Long time.
Well, fantastic. Delighted to hear it. Frank, I'm sure this conversation will continue. Just before I let you go, your research, who will that inform? I mean, is that going to be presented to government departments, or how does that work?
Yeah, well, as I say, this is the fourth, and we have a couple more forthcoming and more that hopefully will come after that. So when we do publish these kind of things, one thing we do is we do send a copy to the minister who's basically responsible for the lottery. We send a copy to the Office of the Regulator of the National Lottery, and I have engaged in making complaints to the lottery about what I see as child-friendly advertising. So we're hoping that things tighten up.
Good to talk to you today, Frank. Thank you for your time. Good morning to
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye now. Tipperary resident there, Dr. Frank Houghton, speaking to us this morning. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about the National Lottery? How much do you spend on the scratch cards? Do you bother with them at all? More importantly, I suppose, do you find yourself a little bit addicted? You might like to tell us about that. Text WhatsApp 083 311 3311 now. Brian was on to say, Fran, neither the Troubles or the famine were games. One was a genocide, the other an attempt at ethnic cleansing. The whole idea of turning them into board games is perverse. Imagine if I was to suggest a board game about the Holocaust of World War II. I'm sure it would meet worldwide opposition, and rightly so. The people behind these games should be ashamed of themselves and held to task for gross inconsideration of the feelings of Irish people, in my opinion. Well, that's a very eloquent a text to us this morning, indeed. And yeah, I would. Something just occurred to me there now. Is it a case that board games are trying to keep pace with video games? Because we all know about how inappropriate video games can be and how graphic and awful they can. Is it a case that, these producers are trying to make board games something similar? I'm not sure. It just occurred to me.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, puck on. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Deputy Mattie McGrath is with me in studio. Good morning to you, Mattie.
Good morning, Fran. Happy New Year, even though January's nearly gone.
Absolutely, yeah. How's the health with you, Mattie? You've been...
Actually, I'm going, Frank, and Fran, and I do appreciate the good wishes of the public and their forbearance as well. I haven't been as available as I should be, but going through a bit of bit of what do you call it, rejuvenation works and things like that.
Yeah.
Like you go for an NCT and you find different things, but thank God I'm upright and alive.
Yeah, well, glad to hear it.
Thanks for all the prayers.
You wanted to pass on some condolences, Mattie, because a few of your friends passing away.
I did, Fran, the late, great Brian Crowley, MEP. I like to canvass with Brian, was a joy, because apart from zapping your energy, because he'd canvass from 9 in the morning till 9 at night non-stop, without bit bite us up, and he was so popular. People loved him, and so popular with the women, popular with everyone. Great debater, very bright, articulate and skillful, and a great MEP while he was out there, and stood by his values and principles. And look, had a huge crowds at the funeral on Sunday, and I'm sure Monday, and he's too young to be gone, for he's only 61. Probably nil health with the last 9 years, from being in the chair. Active, had an accident, when he's young, but great entertainer, great man to sing.
Fantastic. That's how I knew him first. I met him. He was singing with a rock band, would you believe, down in Clonakilty when I met him first. He was only a young lad.
I met someone this morning said, pity they never met him in Clonakilty. They go to that place, but Brian was just larger than life. Well, I knew his late father, who was a TD, and his poor mum is still alive, and he lost a brother, Flor. His dad was Flor, but he lost a brother, Flor, in a car accident some years ago. Well, so there'll be a tragedy, but great guy. Fell foul of the Fianna Fáil party, obviously, when they moved from the group that were in Europe to the ALDI group, and he had his principles and knew what was coming in the ALDI group, all the different liberal policies that were anathema to most Fianna Fáil people. But look, he stuck to his guns, stuck to his principles. Great guy, and he ever Alahid Honorees.
Father Jim, of course.
Father Jim was large life, but I know. I mean, I spent a couple of times with the late Jack Crow and Father Jim, and there were stories to tell.
Yeah.
And we did a bit of a tour of West Tipperary with Shinskale Ella. I'm sure they're recounting those now, but Father Jim was a great priest, great listener,
very bright fellow.
Very bright and very academic. And look, the tributes showed, and the people at the funeral, they just loved him. And he was so good to people in a time of need as well. And so easy with people, difficult times for the church, so easy with people, made things easy. Yeah. I've seen you playing there at masses,
many times.
He was so good at funerals and everything. And he liked his sport, and he liked a bit of crack, and he would put you back in your box pretty fast as well if you wanted to.
Himself and the late Father Jim, Liam Holmes, a great duo.
I'm sure they're having a great recounting now and in Paradise, and please God, his brother, Father Joe, and indeed John, who was a counsellor, and all the Egan family, and he's many parishes that he served in West Tipp, they were uncountable, and the turnout was magnificent. And of course, I couldn't go without mentioning the late PP. What a character.
What a character indeed.
I first met PP in about 2007, I think, the November night, wet night, above in Mary Connie's in Anacarty. And we had a bit of a robust interaction because he was a strong feeling Gaelman at the time. But we became great friends. And look, and his wife Nora and his three sons, but the business acumen that he had, the business and the tributes paid him, and the crowds at his funeral, and he went so fast. I mean, no one expected him to go. Yeah. And
one of the biggest funerals I was ever at.
Really. It had to be. A woman that lives across from the funeral home in Cappa White said it started before 2, and didn't finish till 11:30. But look, he was known for him. I started off with fitting the cookers, all those decades ago, and what a business and employment. And the way he's looked after people trying to build their own houses, the first start, very accommodating with credit and they wanted, whenever they wanted. And those kind of men won't be around again, because I know the business is still going, his sons and his great wife Nora, but those kind of business people, they started with nothing. Yeah. We lost the great Willie Barry as well, who laid 800 miles of piping in South Tipperary when I was a boy going to school. And the way he built up his business and looked after people. And a woman told me, I met her in Tip one day for a cup of tea, and she said he used to sleep under the tractor for a few hours at night just to get going again. The way they were, hard work was medicine.
The work ethic was
yes, but also the serving of the customers. Yeah. And of course, in any business, including your own, the customers are always right, Frank. Yeah, and I have business myself, and you have to be accommodating and listening, but to be able to accommodate those people, and I'm sure there's a big water scheme, or I'm sure the pipeline to Dublin, which I fully oppose, has been well debated about with Father Jim and Willie Barry and indeed PP, all those people above. Look, they were so wise as well. Wisdom you can't buy.
We lost so many people over Christmas. I can't get over it.
And there are many others as well, Frank, that we haven't time to mention here today, and some too young and sudden, and accidents and everything else. Just appeal to people to be slow down on the roads because the roads have gone so dangerous.
Oh, sure, it's so bad out there indeed. You're hosting an event at Ballypadeen. That's outside of, just for people, the old Cashel Kings site there.
I'm sure you danced there, like myself.
I played and danced there.
In the motel at the time.
Yeah.
Look, as far as I'm concerned, Tipperary County Council's Part 8 proposals at Ballypadeen is fundamentally flawed, poorly justified and damaging to the public interest. And I believe that profoundly. Firstly, the proposal is you know what I mean, it's misleading the way it's described and as site remediation works. In reality, it's almost...
Just for listeners though, Mattie, there's houses sort of partially built up on this.
I asked you to go to see it, Fran. You can get in on site. They're fully built.
Yeah.
All they want is the second fixing, and obviously the accommodation works outside and the heating. But the houses are built with mass concrete.
But they're standing there idle for, what is it now, 30 years or something?
I have about 1920. But there's not a crack in them, Fran. The Tipperary Council have a demolition, they have a reconstruction grant, which has been widely availed of. Minister Brown during the week appealed to councils to be more proactive with it. Many people are applying for it here for bits of houses that are with no roofs, and it's a great scheme. And some of them are 200 years old. These houses are less than 20 years old, and to consider knocking them is madness. It's sinful in my opinion, but those grants of up to 70,000 are for reconstruction. 70,000 in any of these houses are beyond finished. The thing about these houses is they got full planning permission from Tipperary County Council back in 2003. I was involved at the time when I was in the County Council with the developer, and a fine man who built a massive scheme in Cashel as well. They call it, what do they call it, out the Golden Road, the towers. They're built with same concrete slabs on top of slabs, but the ceilings, the downstairs ceilings are concrete slabs. The upstairs ceilings are concrete slabs. They will stand the test of time. They will stand a war.
And have they been vandalised?
Oh, totally vandalised. The windows and doors. Other than that, site perfect. The windows and doors, the roofs are attacked. All about one of them is some states offered. There's concrete barges. So to call them as partially constructed is totally misleading. I'm asking people to go and look at themselves in small groups on Saturday. You can only get in small groups because it's building site. Well, it's kind of a wild building site now, overgrown, and to see for themselves. So I believe that the whole situation of the public consultation is very, very poor. As I said, it's misleading to call them partially finished. They are noble house. And they've been built today. Mr. Campion has built them in Dublin, built them in Cork, building 6 stories with this construction method, with these concrete slabs. Now, all the wiring and the plumbing is within the slabs, so there's no problem pulling extra wires. They'll tell you now you have to come up to a new BR rating for any house being reconstructed. But so do you have to with the houses that are roofless and are falling down in our towns and villages that we see that we all want restored. They all have no ratings because they're built in old times with maybe not even...
You think this could be done? But what about the planning issues around it, Mattie?
Planning is put to bed because the planning issues were never successful. I mean, they were built slightly, one lot of them were built slightly offline apparently. An objection went in. The council didn't visit the site for several months, and he had the houses up because these houses would be up one every couple of days because they're built in with a crane when the foundations were in, so they're all put to bed. I can't find the operation. As I said, the council has provided no cost-benefit analysis. There's no demolition costs or completing costs, no analysis for the councillors who have to vote on this or the public. And at the time of national building crisis, demolishing 52 fully complete houses without any financial justification is extraordinary, to say the least, as far as I'm concerned. Right. And attempts to obtain the information I have tried under freedom of information have been refused or heavily redacted. So the lack of transparency undermines confidence in the entire process. And the environmental and traffic impacts, of the demolition are huge. I mean, demolition will generate over 13,500 tonnes of waste, up to 1,700 truck movements. Yet the traffic plan claims only 30 to 40 movements per day. The council have said it's Japanese, not we. I haven't seen any evidence of it, but they haven't in their remediation plan and to deal with that. And the visual and heritage impacts will be worse. The demolition will expose huge scarring. At least the houses are then on nice roofs. Yeah. But if you knock them down to ground level, there's going to be huge scar on the landscape.
What's the long-term plan? If the council goes ahead with demolition, what's the long-term plan?
So the site goes back to the owner, who has the owner. Sorry.
And can that be developed?
No, sure, he'll have to go for planning again for that.
Planning
So, I mean,
again,
it's pure madness. He'll have the site back. There has been a settlement with the builder by the county council. I can't find out how much. There's a confidential, there's a privacy statement on that. But what have the councils been in court cases over the decades? What is the cost of settlement?
People have an opportunity to make submissions on this. Then.
See, this is the situation, and that's closing date. The closing for that is Tuesday,
isn't it?
Tuesday, next Tuesday at 4:30 to Tipperary County Council by 4:30. So I'm asking people to visit the site, to listen to the information given to them on
Are there any issues around that, Mattie, like insurance, or are you trespassing? Is there?
No, the owner owns the site.
Okay.
Contrary to what the council said, the owner owns the council. Now, I've got no instruction from the council. The council voted on it, got an email saying they couldn't visit it. How are they going to vote for such a major project to destroy 52 houses when there's 3,600 families looking for a house in Tipperary, 600 of them in Cashel? So I'm asking people to make up their own minds. I'm not telling people what to do or what to say. Look at them themselves. Even the demolition people that I met by accident there on Monday, I just Monday day to look at the house. No, we're here to look at demolish them. I said, what do you mean? And they said, there's an e-tender out with 10 days. On e-tender, which goes all over Europe, for companies to demolish the house. This is before the public consultation closes at 4:30 next Tuesday. This is before the councils have voted on it. So what is going on here? I mean, this is extraordinary by any shape, make, or form.
All right, so you're inviting people Saturday?
Yes, and ask people to be respectful of the site. Small groups will be taken in on a guided tour. They can look at all the houses externally. They can go into any house they choose and to see them with care and see themselves as dry as pepper and with no windows, no doors at length of time. As I said, all the first fixes are in there. They need second fixing and plumbing and that outside. They can be brought up to the B. Like any house you go now for the grant, you have to be up to the BR standards, high BR standards. It's certified. Same with these, no problem along the way.
I was looking at the legal costs. In respect of this enforcement action, €304,000.
That wouldn't be. It's not a patch of it. It'll be. Look, if it's not into millions, because there's been numerous cases. We can't get access to it. There's been numerous cases in the district court where the prosecutions, which every one of them failed. On the council's point of view, he had to go to the High Court for discovery of documents. Yeah. Why would you have to go to the High Court to discovery of documents of a public county council or whatever? And then, when he went there and threatened the case, the council tried to strike it out. Eventually, the mediation costs, which cost at least $150,000. Mediation, and the council, I understand, look for the mediation and also look for the confidentiality clause. That's my information. I stand to be corrected. They look for it. Settlement has been paid out to go away, and the site is still on his ownership. So why would the county council undertake a project like that?
All right. Well, it's interesting.
It's all ratepayers' money. The rates are increasing by 6%. The property tax people are paying. This is shocking.
Okay. And just for clarity, one of our listeners wants to know, how many houses are there?
52 fully constructed. One of the roofs, the slates on one side of it are damaged. Other than that, all the houses are perfectly roofed, perfectly finished. The doors and windows were in, but every one of them nearly broken. And there's patio doors there in the front of the houses, and every one of them will slide over and back freely, even though they're idle with 18 years.
All right, it'll be interesting. I must drop off
I'm asking people
on Saturday myself.
Yes, to come and see. And for themselves, make up their own mind.
Yeah.
And get the submission in, because it has to be in. But it's peculiar that the public consultation is ongoing and that an e-tender is out with 2 weeks for companies to knock them.
But according to the authority, there's still an opportunity if you want to submit.
Yeah, but I know that.
Yeah.
I know, and so I'm asking people to do it before next Tuesday at 4:30. But I'm making the point: is it a done deal? It's what they call a mediated settlement. Probably knocking them, and then the councils are told they can't visit them, and then they're told that when I met by accident, I met people there, a company from Port Leash, Cllr Demolition Company, that they are answering an e-tender for the demolition of them.
All right, well, we'll see what happens where that is concerned. The chairperson of the government appointed an independent review into how Ireland handled the COVID-19 pandemic has said its final report should be with the government by the end of the year. I think you have some strong feelings on this.
How pathetic. I mean, America, England, Northern Ireland, Scotland, we ever had independent inquiries. I was leader of the rural independent group, so I was at all the meetings with Dr. Houghton and the Taoiseach Taoiseach, whatever, during the whole, when they started first. And to say that I was frightened, I won't say the words, but terribly frightened, but so we all were. But the trauma that ensued and the mistakes that were made. And I looked all the time, I've looked, and I had a government meeting 18 months ago, and that thing was set up, that evaluation, imagine, to call it even that word. I asked for a truly independent inquiry. I'd written to the Taoiseach looking for it at the time, Taoiseach of Radcliffe, and he said at that meeting that day, all the party leaders were there, that Ireland, he started off by saying Ireland is too small a place, that everybody knows everybody, we couldn't really have an investigation. And when I got my chance to speak, which was number 6 or 7 in the grouping pecking order, I said, this exactly answers my call, that we need a truly independent experts from abroad, United States or wherever, independent experts. I have nobody in Ireland, because we are too small a place. And I was kind of dismissed, and then we were asked to submit, and I got on to eminent doctors like Pat Morrissey and others to help me with my list of submissions, but they were never really answered.
And it is as it is. So my understanding is it doesn't have statutory powers, does it not?
And we can't...
so what is the best we can hope for out of this?
It's a waste of money.
Is that we say it was a learning experience and we learn from it and we move on? Is that
the chairman of the evaluation committee? Imagine evaluation of people who lost their lives, families who loads of lost their lives inside windows. They're looking in at him, trying to shout into a glass at him, and they were put into body bags and buried unceremoniously. Like we were the only place in the world, except for North Korea, that the churches were closed.
But they will look into that as part of this.
Typical Irish, look into it. What kind of a looking into it? Evaluation. We need a root and branch. Mistakes were made, and it will always be made. The man or woman that never made a mistake, never made anything. If we're not going to learn from those mistakes, the whole waste of the gear, the protective gear that came, the millions of money that was spent from China was dumped.
Well, what concerns me, and I know that it's a significant part of the inquiry's work, is the whole nursing homes.
Yes,
thing.
The nursing home was disgraceful. It's a conduit. The oxygen that was going to the nursing homes for hospitals. To let people in nursing homes die with no oxygen, let them fend for themselves. It was a Holocaust. Holocaust is the wrong word. It was a terrible situation. I know a situation of family who come to me. Their mother was in a nursing home. No one went to see her. Doctor, priest, or nurse, ambulance. 2 Gardaí had to go on and load her into a squad car and bring her to the hospital where she died a couple of days later. The indignity of that was shocking. And that's the instructions that were given by government. But to have an evaluation is a total cop-out. Typical Micheál Martin, typical Leo Varadkar, now retired. Set up an evaluation, as light a word as possible, light touch, and have a file and put it in on a desk. We had this evaluation. An evaluation. When thousands of lives were lost and the huge damage that's ongoing, people are long COVID and suggested vaccine damage, you name it, and the drug companies, of course, were too powerful. This is the problem. They dictated, and Dr. Houghton wouldn't listen to anyone. He knew best.
And Mattie, their argument to you would be we were in completely unprecedented times, uncharted waters, all of that kind of thing. We didn't know. We did our very, very best to keep people safe at the time. What if that is the argument that's presented to you? What
Fran, I attended the first meeting in government buildings, and I came out. I was hardly able to stand up. I was so frightened. Of course, we're on uncharted waters.
You were frightened by what you were told?
I was told that there was going to be 3,000 dead in a couple of weeks. There was going to be, we appropriated or decided to put it to the house, to the Dáil, to appropriate 3 billion for it. And of course, that didn't stop there, any manner of means. And then everybody voted for everything. And after about a month, when I saw the problems, when I saw the unreality, when I saw the whole lack of information, when I saw that you couldn't be questioned, when I saw the clampdown, when I saw the lockdown, and then when I saw that fascicle, we all saw it, €9 a meal you couldn't go in and have. You could go to the pub, but if you hadn't the €9, it was so comical. Ali, I remember on the time of the attack in Iraq, the man, the comical Ali, we called him. He was on every day briefing. The bombs were nearly up on top of him, how they were winning the war. Mm-hmm. This was as
propaganda.
Bad as that. This was about and the national media. But of course, the media got pumped with funds for ads, pumped national media, and there was no room for this. When you have a situation ever, there's no room for debate. There's no room for discussion. My last topic here, there's really literally no room for debate.
I rarely stand up for so-called mainstream media, Mattie, but I remember you and I, during COVID, having a fair old row about it one day. And I have to say that, and my hand on my heart with this, we were trying to keep people safe by putting the information out there. And that's God's honest truth.
I know that. I wasn't. But but you have to make your mind up as you go along. I told you the first day I came out to my wife, and she dismissed me, and she said, and she still stags me every day. Look, like she saw to it from day one. I didn't. It took me at least a month. And but like I'm a legislator, I have a responsibility to be, to examine everything and see. But I mean, when I couldn't get answers at meetings, when I was locked out of meetings, and when I went to Dublin one day to question Dr. Houghton, one of the last meetings we had, not one of the last, but I suppose well into it, to know, I went up specifically. We were told we could do it online or we could do it in person. And I went up in person. I wanted to find out the science behind the closing of the churches. And I went up to the meeting. I was sitting in an ante-room across from the Chief's office, massive room. And I think Roisin Shorter was there with me and one other. And this guy came in. He was fooling with the big screen, bigger than your window there. And I said, what are you doing? Oh, you're doing it on Zoom, he said. So I said, if I was doing it on Zoom, I'd be in Clonmel. Wouldn't be here in Dublin. So I got up straight across into the Chief's room. Dr. Houghton's behind the door. And then we sat down at the meeting, and I got my chance again. I was number 6 to come in, and the picking out of parties, the size. And I asked about the science behind the churches. The church has been closed and places of worship. And he wouldn't, no answer. And I asked the second time. I said, I'd come up today to find out the science behind it. And the Taoiseach said, Dr. Houghton, you best answer the deputy. And with grin teeth, he said, or clenched teeth, he said, listen, deputy, he said, we're dealing with a pandemic. We'll deal with the lockdown and we'll do the science later. That was his words. We'll do the science. So there was absolutely no science in the closure, no science in most of what they'd done.
But can you understand? Now, I'm not standing up for him. Let me just make the counter argument to you. Can you not account for what he's saying by way of saying, okay, we will do all the study later, but in the meantime, we must try and keep people alive? That would be his argument.
At that stage, there was scandal after scandal of PPE. Doctors were ringing me and contacting me in the west of Ireland. There was murder with couriers, 3 different couriers bringing loads of PPE. Overkill. We bought stuff from China. We bought SH1T. You know what I mean? It was terrible, the stuff we bought. And no evaluation, no inquiry into that. Who ordered all this? Nobody held accountable. Not one person. I don't know how many thousands were dead. And
do you accept or do you argue with the notion that, draconian as it was, Mattie, lives were saved?
But the damage, and some lives, and of course the Hippocratic Oath by any medical person is to save lives, of course. But the amount of lives were lost and destroyed, and the amount of mental health issues, and the damage done to young people, old people, the people who still won't come out of their homes. Fran, you miss them from your social dancing. They're still afraid to come. The fear from that box on television with Dr. Houghton nearly every evening, or Luke O'Neill, or many more of those. And a lot of those people have got very rich out of it, and other people as well. And we have to look. I'm not saying mistakes weren't made. I'm not saying that I know. I don't. We need a proper, in-depth, independent inquiry. However, are we going to deal with 160 people on trolleys in University of Limerick today?
But we're not going to have the kind of inquiry you're talking about.
No. Imagine a desk evaluation. It may well be a desktop, because no power to subpoena. We saw prime ministers, we saw health ministers dragged before committees and inquiries, and rightly so, to account for their. We saw it in England. God knows they didn't make a good job of it, but how can we ever learn from our mistakes? Basic thing. Who was it? Einstein said the definition of insanity was to keep doing the same thing over and over again.
I was looking at the results so far of the UK inquiry, and it's kind of interesting. Did you have a look at that?
Not really. I watched bits of it done.
Yeah, well, they're saying they were ill prepared for a pandemic like COVID-19. I mean,
and so were we.
Yeah, so were we.
I have no problem with that. Of course we were. The first day I told you that I went into government.
Would you not agree, though, Mattie, that we did better than the UK government at the time?
That's the barometer we go by. We know who was in charge at the time, Boris and his party. And so, I mean, look, the double standards. Leo Varadkar was out in the park. He said he was staying in a different house. The fast, it was a case of do what I say, not as I do, and let him eat cake. Was a man on the internet who said that. It was shocking the way the people were treated. The small businesses that were destroyed. And I should have been able to empathise at the first of the programme today with the people in Wexford and Dublin, the business people and homeowners. We went through it in Clonmel. Thankfully, it's all past us. Yeah. And again, you know, the trauma they're going through today. So, I mean, what's the point in paying a lot of money for this evaluation? An evaluation, and what good is an evaluation? If you crash this programme here or crash this station here, you'll be out the door.
The only thing, would it inform us for some future
if we had a proper inquiry? Yes, it would.
Yeah, but even that.
And it's a bad.
I mean, in fairness, it appears they're going to look into everything like young people, education, how all of that was.
Statutory powers. How can you look into something when you can't? I mean, it's the same situation.
Well, the powers. I mean, that just means they can't bring anybody to book, but they can.
They can't subpoena anyone to come in. Anyone says, "Look, go away. Have your evaluation."
And there won't essentially be blame.
having to blame. They won't even be brought in to get their views, to let them explain why the rationale behind some of the decisions. That's what we need. If you happen to powers to subpoena them or to have them come in before a statutory inquiry, sure, it's nonsense. We saw what happened in Limerick in the last week with the trial by jury, which I had myself back in 07, 08. I mean, at the waste, there's 7 Gardaí.
That's where the Gardaí are concerned.
Yeah, and there's 5 more now waiting, and there's 12 Gardaí have been suspended for 7 years. Thanks to Drew Harris and his cabal that he brought into the Gardaí and ran rough.
They're going to lift, I was just reading here, they're going to lift those suspensions following the court cases, though.
Well, of course they have to.
Sorry, with those who have been...
Yeah, but sure, there'll be obviously claims against the state, and I don't blame those people. They were cleared by jury, and I see the hate online, accuse them this. A jury, if we don't have a jury trial, if I hadn't a jury trial, I'd be locked up. Simple as that, for crimes I never committed. Right. I mean, we depend on the jury system here. So, I mean, Drew Harris brought in a weird system here. He destroyed the morale in the guards, and now look where we can't get Gardaí, and they leave as quick as some of them are leaving quicker than they're joining. So I'm making the point, are we ever going to learn here in Ireland? I mean, the court system is too slow. Why should it take 7 years for that to come to court? Look at the stress on the families of those 7 Gardaí from a superintendent rank down, and he started for the 7 years. I would have been waiting 10 years for my case. Only if I made the mistake of looking for a special hearing, which I got.
Oh, right.
And I got a special judge to make sure that I was brought away.
All right, Mattie, good to talk to you today, and thanks for coming into us. Thanks very much. Cllr Mairin McGrath. We'll take a break, back in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. Now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the Expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high-roof vans, long-wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Join the conversation in Tipperary. Contact us through Facebook, Twitter, or email tiptoday@tippfm.com.
Now, several of our listeners on to ask Mattie about various different things. We just ran out of time. Yeah, I did want to mention the triple lock to Mattie. We just didn't have time because we ran over on the discussion where COVID is concerned, and lots of you on with various opinions about that as well, and thank you for that. How can the council do anything with these houses when they don't own the site? All of this was sorted out in the court cases, says one of our listeners, and that's making reference to that meeting that Mattie is hosting on Saturday at the site outside of Cashel there. Some GAA clubs in Tipperary are asking underage boys and girls to pay €2 every time they attend training for the GAA lotto draw, and that's also encouraging gambling. Well, yeah, it's an interesting point, all right, isn't it? That a lot of local clubs and local villages indeed benefiting from these various lottos, but is it viewed, you see, as gambling, and how do you feel about that? 083 311 3311. News and information's on the way.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24 111.
Thanks, Pat, and welcome back to the final hour of Tipp Today. At the very start of the programme, we spoke about that proposed amendment to the Criminal Law and Civil Law Bill by Justice Minister Jim O'Callaghan retains the possibility of counselling notes being disclosed in certain cases following a judicious hearing. Now, this is particularly around the sexual violence trials. But one of our listeners on to say, therapists, psychologists have to break confidentiality if compelled by law. This includes child protection legislation and any court order to submit notes. I was in this situation. Client refused consent to release, so I also refused when approached to do so. If it then went to court where the judge issued an order, he read the notes, decided there was nothing in them that would be of benefit to the defence, so did not hand them on to them. That's interesting because that came up in the conversation where the judge's discretion indeed is concerned. But Laura still is of the opinion that this needs to be dealt with completely. And a lot of reaction to that piece earlier on as well. For the first Tipperary's Hidden History of 2026, my friend Dr. Conor Reedy returns to the townland where he spent much of his childhood. And in doing so, he returns to one of his favourite themes. The murder outlined in this month's episode was not the result of any agrarian or political dispute. Instead, it's the story of a young farmer's descent into madness where he committed the ultimate act of domestic violence.
Because a violent death took place in 19th century Ireland did not mean that this was an agrarian killing. The archives of Tipperary's Hidden History document the county and the country's violent past, and much of this was indeed connected to the difficult relationship between the Irish people and those who owned the land upon which they attempted to survive and thrive. The story we outline this month is not one of those tales. This is purely a case of human failing. A bad person with a proven track record of violence who decides to take the life of the person who should have been his nearest and dearest. This is nothing less than the ultimate act of domestic violence. During the third week of October 1870, a deep sense of shock settled over the townland of Carrigatore and the wider Nina district. Word began to spread of a crime so brutal that even seasoned police officers and magistrates struggled to comprehend it. A young woman, Mary, a wife and mother of 6 children, had been murdered close to her home at Mount Sack. Her body was discovered lying in a ditch near the house. The condition in which she was found was horrifying. Contemporary reports describe her skull as being frightfully smashed, with blood pooling beneath her head and clear evidence that she had been struck repeatedly. There was no mistaking the savagery of the attack. The alarm was quickly raised and the police arrived to make inquiries. Almost immediately, suspicion focused on one man, 37-year-old William, Mary's husband. Even before his disappearance became known, the local constabulary had information suggesting that all was not well within the household. Local newspapers painted a disturbing picture. William was described as a fine-looking young man and a comfortable farmer holding land on the estate of Captain Finch. But beneath that outward respectability, it was said that he had grown increasingly sullen in recent times. The cause, according to those who knew him, was an obsessive jealousy, a conviction that his wife was being unfaithful. Crucially, this was a belief shared by no one but himself. On the night of the murder, it was alleged that under some pretext, William persuaded his wife to leave the house with him. Before doing so, he locked their young children inside, ensuring that they could not follow or raise the alarm. The pretext was that he needed her to accompany him to bring in a dead calf from the fields. So he brought Mary to a lonely spot in the field, and this was a place where her cries would not be heard. What happened next could only be reconstructed from the condition of Mary's body and the marks on the ground. It appeared that Mary was first felled with a stone, before her husband proceeded to beat her skull with further stones until she was dead. The brutality of the attack sent waves of fear and revulsion throughout Carrigatore and the wider district. While there was universal sympathy for the murdered woman, opinion was divided on the state of mind of her husband. Many believed that William had been unhinged for some time, his jealousy sliding into something darker and more dangerous. An inquest was arranged and the coroner, Michael Marr, was notified. Meanwhile, William was nowhere to be found. The case would come before the courts the following spring. On Tuesday, the 7th of March 1871, William was formally arraigned at Nenagh, charged with the willful murder of his wife Mary on the night of the 21st of October 1870. He pleaded not guilty. This was not William's first time before a court accused of a crime against his wife. Opening the case for the prosecution, Mr. Harris, QC, told the jury that it was one of the most painful cases ever to come before a Nenagh court. He acknowledged the heavy responsibility resting on the jurors, reminding them that their verdict would determine whether the man before them would be handed over to the public executioner. The prosecution's case, he said, would rest largely on circumstantial evidence, but evidence that was clear, consistent and compelling. The Crown believed that once the facts were heard, the jury would have little difficulty in reaching a verdict. The court was first taken through the geography of the area. Constable William Hicks and the county surveyor A.H. Crawford explained the location of the home, the surrounding lanes and the place where Mary's body had been found. A map was produced to help the jury visualise the movements described by witnesses. One of the earliest witnesses was Michael Hurley, who recalled seeing William on the afternoon of Friday the 21st of October. William had been travelling from Nenagh towards Portrue and had asked Hurley how best to cross the Tullis River. Hurley pointed out the route that would lead him home. William, he said, appeared sober and calm. James Ryan, a cousin of the accused, testified he saw William later that night between 8 and 9 o'clock in the company of his brother Michael. They stayed only briefly before leaving again. Under cross-examination, Ryan admitted that William had been jealous for several years, though he himself did not believe there was any basis for it. Then came the testimony that silenced the courtroom. Two of William's children were called to give evidence, a moment that moved many present to tears. Honora, just 8 years old, was carefully questioned to establish that she understood the difference between truth and falsehood. She told the court that she had been taught that telling lies would send her to hell. In her evidence, she recalled the night her parents left the house together. Her father had come home and asked her mother whether she had seen the young fella that day. He then claimed there was a sheep or animal dead and he asked Mary to come out and show him. Before leaving, he bolted the door from the outside, trapping the children inside. Honora never saw her mother alive again. Her older sister Bridget corroborated much of this account. She described how her mother had urged her father to wait until morning, fearing that he would be searching for livestock in the dark. Nevertheless, Mary went with him. When William returned, Bridget noticed something chilling. The stick he had taken with him was gone. Neighbours soon became involved. Bridget Ryan described going to the house the following morning and finding the children locked inside. Other women, including Maria Corney, spoke of discovering Mary's body lying in a ditch nearly 50 perches from the house. A child's shoe was found nearby in the mud. Police officers testified to the injuries observed on the body, while medical witnesses provided grim detail. Dr. McHugh, who carried out the post-mortem examination on the 31st of October, described multiple fractures to the skull, several facial injuries, and evidence that the scalp had been torn back. The wounds were consistent with blows from a heavy stick. Evidence was also given about William's movements in the days after the murder. Several witnesses described him arriving wet, frightened and agitated at their homes, asking to be hidden or taken in. Others recalled him speaking cryptically about a bad job that could not be helped. A significant portion of the defence case rested on William's mental state. Witness after witness described his obsessive jealousy, his belief that men were watching or approaching his wife, and his conviction that he was being mocked or betrayed. There was testimony that he had previously spent time in an asylum, and that attempts had been made by family members, neighbours, and even the parish priest to have him confined for his own safety and that of his wife. Father James Ryan, parish priest in the district before his transfer to Nenagh, spoke movingly of his efforts to reason with William. He stated unequivocally that Mary's character was beyond reproach. Despite repeated questioning, he was never able to produce a single fact to support his suspicions. Father Ryan admitted that he feared violence and had advised Mary to leave the house temporarily for her own protection. Despite this, no formal committal of William took place. After the close of evidence, the jury was addressed by counsel for both sides. The prosecution stressed that jealousy, however intense, did not excuse murder unless the accused was so insane that he did not understand the nature of his actions. The defence pleaded that William's mind had been unhinged for years. In his charge to the jury, Judge Keogh spoke with evident emotion. He described the crime as the greatest known to the law, the deliberate taking of human life, made all the more dreadful by the fact that the victim was the accused's wife, the person he was most bound to protect. After retiring for deliberation, the jury returned in about half an hour with a verdict of guilty, accompanied by a recommendation to mercy. Interestingly, it appears that the judge did not actually hear the recommendation to mercy, and it's not known whether anyone pointed this out to him before he passed sentence. William, when asked if he had anything to say, muttered a confused denial and spoke vaguely of grievances against his wife's relatives. Judge Keogh, visibly shaken, then donned the black cap and passed the sentence of death. The execution was set for Wednesday morning, the 26th of April, 1871, to be carried out within the walls of the prison. Throughout the long trial, William had shown little emotion, even when his own children gave evidence. But as he was being led away, heavy sighs were heard from the dock. In the courtroom, some of his female relatives broke down completely, while others fainted. With that, the court was cleared, and one of the most disturbing cases to be heard in a Nenagh courtroom for many years came to its grim conclusion. As we have learned from the account of the events outlined in this episode, William had very few friends. His fate, as outlined by the judge, was certainly enough to raise emotion, pity, and fear among some in the court. Just days after the end of the trial, however, that handful of supporters could breathe a sigh of relief. The authorities at Nenagh Jail received word from Dublin Castle that the Lord Lieutenant had commuted the death sentence on William. He would instead serve a sentence of penal servitude for life. In an indication of what those around him all his life might have been dealing with, apparently William reacted to the news with indifference and surprise. He was expecting a full and free pardon, holding on to the idea that he was justified in killing his wife. We end our story today several months before it began. Some 5 months before he murdered his wife of 8 years, William's behaviour escalated. Things had been bad for the past 3 years. He had been swinging pitchforks at his wife, razors over her head, accusing her of infidelity, chasing her around the house. On the 1st of May 1870, it was a Sunday, William ran at Mary, brandishing a stick and threatening to kill her and rake her under the ashes. Several days later in court, Mary expressed genuine fear of her husband. Her lawyer implored the judges to use their powers to protect Mary, lest she end up dead at the hands of her husband, something that had already happened in a recent high-profile case in Roscrea. When asked by the court if she felt in danger, Mary profoundly declared that she was in fear of her husband. She was in fear of her life. William told the court that he did not care whether he was sent to jail. He was ordered to procure the bail of 2 sureties for £10 and give his own recognizance of £20, that he would keep the peace for 2 years, or in default of finding securities, he would be detained in custody for 6 months. Like too many women in modern Ireland, Mary was not listened to by the courts. Her tormentor received a token monetary slap on the wrist. 5 months later she was dead by his hands. Had the authorities taken proper, credible action when it mattered, her tragic end would not have become part of Tipperary's hidden history.
The first hidden history of 2026, and we look forward to many, many more right throughout the year. We'll take a break. We're back with more Tip Today in just a few moments' time.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. Now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high-roof vans, long wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
And I'm joined now by Cllr Mairin McGrath. Good morning to you, Maureen.
Good morning, Fran, and to all your listeners.
I want to speak to you about some, as you described them, unfair planning rules in just a moment's time, Maureen. But you want to mention two men of music, indeed, who we lost recently.
Absolutely, and I was listening, I suppose, to Mattie there in the last hour, and I know he would have been disappointed to have forgotten about two true grails that we lost in the last month, them being the great Sean O'Shea and indeed Liam Cohen of the Rebel Hearts. Yeah. And, you know, when you think about the musical talent that they brought and how much they immersed themselves both in our proud cultural tradition, it was just so sad to have two great men of music and talent pass in such a short space of time from each other. And Sean, I suppose, known so well for his pucker brilla, was no stranger to Tipperary. He often performed in Brew and Cashel, and I would have got to know him through closest as well as my sisters, who often shared the stage with him at shows, and Mattie too, and always had a great, wit and talent and kindness about him. So it was, what a life he led. And of course also then the great Liam Cohen of the Rebel Hearts, and you think about how much of a proud Republican he was, and he had a long battle as well. Just very, very sad losses for the two of them and for their respective families and their bands or their, the musical companions as well.
Well, that's for certain. Thanks for that, Maureen. Now, unfair planning rules in Tipperary are stopping young people from being able to build their homes and settle in rural areas near their families. That's according to yourself, Maureen, and you tabled a motion calling on the council to review its policy on the development of one-off houses along strategic road routes. Now, when you talk about strategic road routes, what exactly are you talking about there, Maureen?
So the one that I often give an example of, Fran, is the old Dublin to Cork road, the R639, say from Skeenerinka up to Cllr, onto Newin, onto Castle and further on. And, these used to be busy roads prior to our motorway network, but these now are known to be, wide, long, straight roads, and oftentimes quite quiet as well because of the motorway network. But our planning rules under the County Development Plan are really strict when it comes to building on any of these kind of roads. And that's why I suppose I tabled a motion, because a number of cases have come to me, in the recent past, where people who have a site, have the ability or the wherewithal or the finances to build, and the desire to live in their own rural area. Three, I suppose, formidable or admirable things in this day and age, because it's so hard to get an appropriate site. It's so hard to get the finances behind you to say you want to build, and it's also great then to be saying, I want to live in the area that I grew up in. But the rules around building on these, strategic or regional roads are much harder in Tipperary than they are in some of our neighbouring counties, and that's why I asked the council to review the policy. And I suppose there was a robust debate at our last council meeting, and I was, despite pushback from the executive, from both planning and roads point of view, I got great support from my colleagues across the county and across party lines as well, in support of the motion.
Yeah, I'm just kind of unclear. The authority is saying, Maureen, that the restrictions are needed to ensure the safety of users, and I can well understand that. But then, on the other hand, they're saying that some exceptions are made for developments along these roads. So it's not a blanket ban by any means.
No, it's not. But like I suppose when you're looking at the local roads, the connecting roads that we all live and drive on every other day, they're much more narrow, much more windy, and there's a lesser availability of appropriate sites. The sight lines that you get when you come to the entrances of sites on local roads are much more difficult. And then you compare to these strategic roads. I think road safety is much more, achievable. And, when you are able to pull out and look left and right 2 or 3 times what you would be on a local road. There is exceptions, but I don't really accept them to be legitimate planning reasons. One is that you have to have owned the site for 10 years. So that's not a planning reason. That's just a delaying tactic that frustrates the planning process. The other one is for it to be a shared entrance. Now, every access on these roads have an entrance of a shared entrance with a domestic dwelling, an existing domestic house. That's just not possible sometimes. There might be, a landlocked, or there might be a different land holding between you, and they don't have the ability to share an entrance. But there is agricultural accesses to all of these sites anyway. And I would argue as well that a lot of the agricultural accesses are right on the roadside rather than domestic dwellings that are pushed back and set back with a greater sightline. So
but
if you allowed for planning, it would actually give a better opportunity to achieve better sightlines.
But if the restrictions were relaxed, Maureen, and it led to some sort of a floodgate opening on this, then I could see how you would have safety issues on these roads.
Come here, Fran. There's miles of these roads within the county. I don't anticipate that there'd be any bit of a floodgate. It's not that we're going to have houses the whole way along. I know of 3 cases. Other councillors might know of 1 or 2 around their, respective areas. But these are small numbers in one sense. But every one case is a family that gets to build for themselves. And, Mattie spoke earlier about the shortage of housing and everything that's happening in that regard. These are people that want to build on their own land, do it for themselves. They're not looking to go into the towns. They're not looking to put pressure on the housing market and compete with other young people. Every one house that can be built or can be accommodated in this matter should be. And I think, like I said earlier, it's such a hard thing to get to a stage where you want to get planning permission, and that Tipperary County Council enforce stricter rules than other councils, I just don't think is fair. And it really bugs me, because I suppose I'm at that stage myself, and I can see other young people who are really trying to do everything that they can, but they're being knocked for no good reason.
Yeah, is it not down to money though? Because when I read through it, I found a line in it, and I think it might have been the Director of Services who said, we run the risk of the Department of Transport reducing the allocation for these roads if we were to relax the policy. So is that closer to what really this is all about?
Well, I don't think so, because, again, I spoke to colleagues in other counties and I gave them the example, say of the R639 from Cllr on to Cashel, and they say, no, we don't have that stipulation. So they can get around it. Why can't we? I just think that was an excuse. And look, at the end of the day, my motion was put down, it was supported, it was seconded by Councillor Seamie Morris and got widespread support. So the council, albeit maybe reluctantly, did commit to our review of this policy later in the year when we're doing the midterm review of the county development plan. So I welcome that, because look, at the end of the day, we're constantly told those planning policies are the councillors' plans, despite the fact maybe where hands can be twisted into doing something that we don't want to. In one of the, I suppose, rebuttals from the top table, they said, oh, well, you adopted this plan 2 years ago. And we did, with some reluctance as well, because planning policy is very difficult. But now we're coming to a stage where we're saying, well, look, some of it's working, some of it's not. And we need to be able to admit that this isn't working and can tweak it so that we can support, again, young people to live and to move back into their own rural areas.
Yeah, so do you go along with what Councillor Seamie Morris said then? He was talking about the National Development Plan, and he said it's out of kilter at this particular point because it just wants people to live in the towns and villages and to develop those places as opposed to the one-off housing or rural housing and the like. Do you go along with that? It's out of kilter?
I do, and it's a shame to say, because when you think of rural villages where there's no wastewater treatment plants, and again, I think of my own village, Newcastle, Golden, there's so many, there's no capacity in the village to develop more houses. So then you say, I can't build in a rural area, so I'll go to my local village. I can't build there because there's no capacity. So then I go to the local town, where you're then in compete with other people who are going to live in the town. It's just wrong, and it's going against what we need to, have our local towns, our local villages and rural areas thrive, to save the school, save the shop, the pub, whatever it may be. So we really need to go back. I think if somebody has a site and a reasonable ability to build, and I'm not looking for the floodgates to open. I'm not saying, get rid of all the rules, but we need to have a bit of a relaxation, a bit of flexibility to allow young people to be able to build. And if I could just give the example of the N24, the N74 and the N76, they're all TII roads, managed by the TII. The TII set the policy about development of one-off houses on those roads. So our hands are tied in relation to that. So if somebody wants to come and get planning on one of those roads, the council are stuck by TII's stringent policy. So there's a cohort of people that are going to be locked out, for want of a better word, on those kind of roads. But we apply a stricter, again, policy on our own regional roads that we actually have the control of for no good reason. So it's quite, I suppose, a particular piece of policy in the county development plan, but one, like I said, it might just help a dozen people across the county, but it's not a dozen people who can house themselves in a housing crisis.
So your motion was supported, Maureen, but really at the end of the day, will we see change on this?
Well, look, I suppose, unless you put it in, you won't see any change. And like I said, I got great reluctance and pushback. And one thing I also want to say is the Director of Planning said, look, we only have 4% of refusals across the county in planning applications. And I totally don't accept that figure as a true figure, because as a councillor, and I often deal with people that are going for planning or planning agents who assist people in submitting planning applications, who say, look, I have a site here, do you think I'll get planning? And I'd say, well, no, I don't think you will because of the rules. They'll talk to an agent. They'll knock it on the head before an application goes in, save themselves the time, the stress and the money. They do a pre-planning application to, go through the motions to see again, will they get a planning application through? And they don't submit it. Oftentimes then before a decision is due, if it's going to be a negative decision, we'll get a call and say, it's going to be negative, maybe they'd rather withdraw it. So 4% isn't a true figure of the amount of people who want to build but can't build. Because why, if they're going to be told no, would they waste thousands of euro really, and time and heartache unnecessarily in this, housing crisis and cost of living crisis?
All right, Maureen,
I hope so.
I must leave it there, but thank you for your time this morning, and good morning to you. That's Cllr Mairin McGrath speaking to us there. We've got Conspiracy Files on the way.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tipp today on 1800 938 007.
And it's time for this.
The Conspiracy Files on Tipp Today.
Now, Ellie, you have a conspiracy for us. This is one I'm really, really interested in, and it scares the pants off me, to be honest.
Well, it does, and I suppose it's something that I think is probably more common than you think, because I think many of us have experienced some sign or maybe message from a deceased loved one. Now, it could be that you felt their presence so strongly that it was like they were physically there with you. Or here in Ireland, one that's very popular, of course, is the robin landing on your windowsill after, or animals visiting after someone has passed away. Now, there is something deeply mystical about these encounters. And while they leave you feeling supported and strengthened despite the grief or loss, they often stand out as a very special event, making us sit up and pay attention. But the question in it is, could it be the spirit of the dead person that's trying to communicate with us? Are we receiving a message from beyond to let us know that they are okay? Then as quickly as that wonder will arise, it's often snuffed out as just coincidence or a figment of your imagination, or something that you're deeply seeking that you will find where you can. Now, we've been deeply conditioned as well by rational social convention to dismiss these very brief moments of deep connection. Of course, we're taught to trust the physically seen and felt rather than our own gut feelings or invisible inklings. And we're taught that there's no such thing as spirit communication. But then, wasn't there also a deep knowing that it was a sign from our deceased loved ones? So it's an interesting topic. Now, I think most of us can probably identify some sign or what we feel maybe is some interpretation of a loved one contacting us. But there are a lot of documented and really incredible stories from people who do claim and who are adamant that their loved ones used technology to contact them after they passed away, which is a very interesting aspect of it. And that's the focus of this episode, Calls from Beyond the Grave. So the one we're going to start with is Dean Koontz, who's a very well-known author. Many people will know who he is, will have read some of his books. Of course, he's an international best-selling science fiction writer. But an interesting story that he has told in the past. On the 20th of September of 1988, Dean had an experience that he would not write about for nearly a decade. But he claimed in his essay called Beautiful Death that it was this encounter that absolutely convinced him that there is life after death. Here's what happened to Dean Koontz.
In 1988, Koontz received a strange phone call from what sounded like a woman. The person from the other line simply said, "Please be careful." According to the author, the voice sounded very distant, although he could still clearly hear the woman. She repeated the warning 3 times, and each time she said it, the sounds became more distant than the last. Koontz said that although he didn't know who the caller was, he could still surmise that the person sounded very much like his mother. The thing is, Koontz's mother died 20 years ago. A few days later, Koontz went to visit his father, who was then residing in a facility. The old man apparently had some behavioral issues and had recently assaulted someone. When Dean came, his father grabbed a knife. Koontz had to wrestle his father to get the knife. When the police arrived, they thought Koontz was the perpetrator and ordered him to drop the knife, or else they would shoot. He did so accordingly and averted the crisis. Koontz realized that the phone call was meant for him to become more vigilant.
Well, why didn't he document it, Ellie, for 10 years?
He didn't think anyone would believe him, and he spent years convincing himself that it didn't happen, that it might have been a phone call from somebody else that he interpreted differently, and that it was only after what happened with his father. He never really held much relevance in that phone call before that attack by his father.
Right, okay.
Now, there was only a couple of weeks between those incidents, but he never truly believed it. And I think after a few years, and he is a science fiction writer, so he would be open-minded.
Yes.
So as he looked back on his life, he realised that that was a real pivotal moment in his life and a warning that came to him.
What about Charles Peck?
Charles Peck is a very interesting story and a relatively recent one, because this happened just in 2008. And on September 12th of that year at 4:22 p.m, it happened in California's San Fernando Valley, where a commuter train carrying 225 people collided at a combined speed of 83 miles per hour with a freight train run by a crew of 3. Now, it became known as the Chatsworth crash. Now, ultimately, 135 people were injured and 25 people were killed in that crash. Now, one of those people was 49-year-old Charles E. Peck. Now, he had come to Los Angeles for a job interview. He had 3 grown-up children from a previous marriage. His fiancée actually heard about the crash from a news report on the radio as she was driving to the train station to pick him up. So as she continued on her journey to try and get some news, Charles's parents and siblings and his children, they all joined her as well as they waited for news on him. What happened then was that for 11 hours after that crash, Charles' phone placed call after call to his loved ones. It called his son, his brother, his stepmother, his sister, and his fiancée. As a result of those calls, they believed that he was trapped inside and trying to get out and trying to contact them for help. Here's his fiancée, Andrea, talking to a local news station about what happened.
She was on her way to pick him up from the Metrolink station when she heard the news on the radio. She knew immediately he was on that train, but was he alive? And then they got the first call. It was to Chuck's son in Utah.
And he said, "My dad just called me. And I said, what did he say? Where is he? Is he okay? He didn't say anything. The phone rang and it said, Dad.
They watched the tormenting search for survivors, certain that Chuck was alive and trapped in the wreckage. Between Chuck's kids and other family members, about 36 calls were made from Chuck's phone, but there was only static and silence. And then, almost 5 hours after the collision, at 9:08, Andrea got a call.
And we were yelling in the phone, hang in there, baby. We're going to get you out. You're going to be okay.
It was the hope they needed. And when the rescue efforts were about to turn to recovery, there was another call. And that prompted search crews to trace it. It was coming from the first train. So they went back in one last time.
And they were so excited. They had this incredible adrenaline rush at the thought that they could possibly go find another survivor. And we gave her a description, and they spent the next couple of hours looking for him. And they did end up finding him, and they said that he had died immediately on impact, and there was no way he could have been calling us.
She believes those phone calls got them through the night and helped them find Chuck's body.
The intellectual side of my brain thinks, gee, it was a computer malfunction, and the emotional side of my brain it was just Chuck letting us know that he knew that we were scared for him and letting us have hope.
And she's also comforted by the fact that they were happy, ready to get married and start their new life together. She believes he was riding that train with a smile.
He died instantly and he didn't suffer. And when you love somebody, you couldn't ask for a better way for them to leave this life. Just happy and excited and didn't see it coming.
And they may never find out exactly how those calls were made because Chuck's phone was never found. Reporting from News Center, Lynette Romero, back to you in the studio.
Wow, I love the final line. The phone was never found.
Never found. No, never found. So they don't know. They weren't able to get the phone to test. Was it some glitch that maybe the phone was leaning in such a way or had been damaged in such a way that it was just continually ringing everyone in his favourites list? That's the theory when it comes to Charles, but his family don't believe that.
Right, but he was killed instantly.
Instantly.
Right.
Yeah.
Lorraine Evans, Ali.
Lorraine Evans is another interesting one. Lorraine was a loving mother, wife and friend, lived a very normal life in a quiet town, worked as a nurse raising her family, but in early 2008 tragedy struck when she was diagnosed with a terminal illness. Now, despite her condition, Lorraine remained positive, spending her final days surrounded by her family and loved ones. She sadly passed away on March 14th of 2008 peacefully in her sleep. Now, her family, of course, mourned. They held a funeral and tried to move forward. But then, just days after she died, the phone started ringing. So 2 weeks after Lorraine's death, her daughter, Sarah Evans, was at home when her phone rang. The caller ID displayed her mother's name. Sarah obviously was very frightened by this. She answered, half expecting a mistake, that maybe it was a telemarketer or a wrong number, but there was only silence. Then she said she could hear a faint whisper. Now, she dropped the phone in shock, and when she checked the call log after, it was undeniably her mother's number. But her phone had actually been disconnected after her death. Over the next month then, 12 more calls came through, each one more unsettling than the last. So desperate for answers, Sarah contacted the phone company. The representative for the phone company did confirm that Lorraine's line had been deactivated the day after her death. So no outgoing calls should have been possible on that. But the call logs do show 13 outgoing calls, all from Lorraine's number. But even more chilling with it, each call lasted exactly 13 seconds.
Wow.
So was it a glitch, was it a cruel prank, or was it something sinister? Well, this was investigated because word of the 13 phone calls spread quickly. Paranormal researchers and tech experts both separately examined the case, and they've offered several theories for it. Now, the tech experts say it could have been a technical glitch, that there might have been a system error somewhere where old calls were replayed due to a server malfunction, although phone companies denied this was possible. It could have also been a hoax, of course. Skeptics accused the family of fabricating the story. But remember, you have the phone records and multiple witnesses confirming that the calls actually did happen. Now, could it have been a message from beyond? Because mediums claimed that Lorraine was trying to communicate. And what they find very notable in Lorraine's case is that it was 13 calls, each lasting for 13 seconds. And 13 carries a very a spiritual significance because it is the number of transformation in numerology. But no definitive reason has ever really been given. Now, on the topic of phone calls from beyond, there is a very well-known book on the topic, and it's called Phone Calls from the Dead. Straightforward enough. And it was the result of a 2-year investigation into this phenomenon. And it was carried out by parapsychologists D. Scott Rogo and Raymond Bayless. A lot of interesting stories contained and verified in this book. Here is one of them.
The Gelb incident. So Dr. Lester Gelb, a psychoanalyst from Riverdale, New York, was preparing to leave home for a family outing when the phone rang. He answered, and one single word came. Lester, spoken in the unmistakable voice of his deceased mother. She had died months earlier, but this wasn't a faint whisper. He described the voice as vivid and clear and emotionally distinct. She had a particular crackle, a tone, a manner of speaking that he knew intimately. It was her. He asked repeatedly for the caller's identity, but the voice simply repeated his name again and again, and then came a sharp, clacking sound, and the line went dead. He was deeply affected, but remained professionally sceptical. He told investigators, "I don't have a clear explanation for what I experience. Therefore, I remain intrigued."
Intrigued, indeed. Claims of communication from the dead, it's not a new phenomenon.
No, it's certainly not. Like, it's existed since even before it's not just a phone issue. I mean, there's been stories of it there since we've had even the most basic of technology. There was also reports of it happening with Morse code, interestingly enough.
Wow.
And there was a very famous case in London in the early 1900s. Here's the background to that case.
One of the earliest reports of phantom phone calls dates back to the early 20th century, when a London solicitor, David Wilson, received bizarre messages on a machine he had made himself from a wireless telegraph. Devised to use the Morse code system, Wilson's communication machine first received strange messages in 1913 when used by his friend. The signals were delivered in Morse as audible beeps. Astonishingly, the device continued to relay messages even after the receiving wire had been disconnected. With the help of a second witness, Wilson translated each message as they came through. The telephonic messages the machine received appeared to be meaningful. In January 1915, this was received. Great difficulty, await message, 5 days, 6 evening. Similar instructional phrases like wait until next Tuesday also came through. However, despite waiting, nothing ever happened that illuminated on the message's meanings. Confused as to why he was receiving such messages without any input, the solicitor invited researchers to inspect his machine and try to explain the source of the Morse code. No explanation and no source of the signal could be found. After publishing his experiments, David Wilson and his Morse code communications disappeared from the records.
All right, Ellie, so we can guess what the science is going to say on this, but, I mean, there's so much of it that it's hard to dismiss it, isn't it?
Well, there is, because science will tell you that it could be anything from a glitch in the system, static or misdials. Many people report receiving unexplained calls, even texts and voicemails as well from dead loved ones. They are nearly always described as being static filled. You can often hear a faint voice maybe in the background or a whisper. And it suggests a spiritual attempt at connection, even if the mechanism remains a mystery. Now, it does frequently occur, those reports of these kind of phenomena, they tend to occur very soon after a death in the family. Now, while the exact cause is unknown, some believe spirits can actually use electronic fields as a way of communicating and sending a message maybe that they're okay. So if you look at the various scientific and skeptical views, if you're looking at technical glitches, calls might be delayed. I mean, that is a possibility. And maybe they only reach the phone after a person has died or after numbers have been reassigned and it's some sort of settling issue with a new number. If you also look at the psychological comfort, now these experiences I'm sure while surprising and while a bit frightening, they can also be very comforting. And they can offer a sense of continued connection, which psychology explores as a coping mechanism. But on the other side of that, skeptics will say that it's something that's created in the mind of the bereaved. Also,
a coping mechanism.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you look at the paranormal perspective, the spiritual communication, some believe that spirits can have the ability to use technology like phones, also like Morse code, like we heard, and they can use electrical fields as a medium for contact or communication. Now, there has been research conducted on this topic as well, because organisations have funded studies, like King's University College has researched these claims from both physical and spiritual angles, also exploring how spirits might interact with technology. So in essence, whether dead people can actually call you remains a mystery. But that experience, as you've heard, of receiving these calls is a widespread phenomenon. It's not rare, and people will attribute to both technological anomalies and also to spiritual phenomena, depending on your background and your own beliefs.
Yeah, but I mean, if you do believe that when you die, you go on to some other realm or something like that, you can understand why technology might be a way to communicate as opposed to a personal communication, if you know what I mean, Ali.
That's true. And yeah, and you remember, it all goes in phases too, but I find with contact from the grave, this is one that has evolved with technology, because if you look at how we would have interpreted paralogical and paranormal events in the past, like you would have had the exoplasm, remember that, where you would have taken pictures of, that wouldn't go now. I mean, nobody would take that seriously now. There was also a famous one during the 70s where you take photographs of televisions. Remember that one? And the pictures of the dead people would then be seen afterwards in the screen of the television.
Oh, right. Okay.
So it does tend to follow a pattern depending on our technology as well. That would also go along with the Morse code, with phones. Interestingly, computers haven't been really used for communication. It tends to be
very interesting.
Telephones.
Well,
yeah.
you would really be surprised if you got an email.
Imagine. Yeah. To whom it may concern.
Did you ever have an experience?
I don't think so.
I mean, we've all had the robins and
yeah. You see, the robin is a big thing especially in Ireland.
Yeah.
No, like we would mock that a lot in our family.
I played a gig in Ballyedmond in Wexford, and a butterfly. I think it was a red admiral, came down onto the keyboard. And I sat on the keyboard while I played. And that was fine. And I took a photograph of it because it was just stayed throughout the whole gig. It must be a country music fan. But anyway, the next time I went to Ballyedmond to play, another butterfly, or maybe the same butterfly, I don't know, came back down onto the keyboard. And I have photographs to prove it.
That's interesting.
Now, there's no reason why a butterfly should have been in the place to begin with, and I think they might have been out of season. I don't know.
That's very interesting. Did it, at the time, did it strike you as a message?
Kind of, a little bit. But then again, I don't know, was I trying to impose maybe what might suit me to impose on it? You know, I know
a family who they suffered a very sudden and tragic loss of a young man in the family. And during the wake at their home, there was a kitten that arrived at the door that everyone fussed over for a couple of days. And then once their son had left and had been buried, the kitten was gone and had disappeared. And they still maintained that day that kitten was somehow linked to him, that it was some comfort. So
it's interesting.
It's interesting, yeah.
Isn't it indeed? Contact from beyond the grave. Ali, thanks very much indeed for that. Ali looks after content. Leanne was producing today. Stephen is on the way with the Time Tunnel on the lunchtime show, and I'll talk to you tomorrow from Nina. Look after yourselves, won't you? Bye-bye.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.